If you can't do for yourself what the white man is doing for himself, don't say you're equal with the white man.
That's right.
If you can't set up a factory like he sets up a factory, don't talk that old equality talk. Who are you? You don't know. Don't tell me Negro, that's nothing. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then? What was your name? It couldn't have been Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. They don't have those kind of names where you and I came from. No, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Where did it go? Where did you lose it? Who took it? And how did he take it? What tongue did you speak? How did the man take your tongue? Where is your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What did the man do to make you as dumb as you are right now? This is American justice. This is American democracy. And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me. Democracy is hypocrisy. If democracy means freedom, why aren't our people free? If democracy means justice, why don't we have justice? If democracy means equality, why don't we have equality?
Escape. Many of our people turn to crime, stealing, gambling, prostitution, organized crime that has been organized here in Holland by the white man. You don't organize any crime. He organizes the crime. He controls the prostitution in Holland. He controls the numbers racket in Holland. He controls the drug traffic in Holland. He is the one that controls it. He is the master criminal. He is the arch enemy. He gets you drunk and then locks you up for being drunk. He sells you whiskey and then locks you up when he catches you drunk. He sells you a deck of cards and locks you up when he catches you using them. Turn to crime, and I had plenty of experience of it right out here in Harlem. I know what it's all about. Stealing, gambling, and prostitution. We allow ourselves to be used by the white overlords downtown to bring their dope back up here in Harlem and push it among our poor, innocent, unsuspecting young people. Why, we let the white man use us to make drug addicts out of children, to make drug addicts out of babies, drug addicts out of mothers. We let the white man use us to bring that poison up here in Harlem and stick it into the veins of our people. You take it downtown and give it to some white people and see how long you walk the streets as a free man. No, the only time he'll let you get away with it is when you're giving it to your own kind. When you're poisoning your own kind. Making your own kind high and making your own kind drunk. I know what I'm talking about. I used to be used by that blue-eyed white man for the same thing. I know it. He's the one behind it, and he knows that I know it and can't say anything about it because he knows that I know it. You can't get dope in Harlem without the white man's permission. You can't play numbers in Harlem without the white man's permission. You can't open up a gambling house in Harlem without the white man's permission. Why, you can't even be a prostitute without the white man's permission. And then when he makes you these things, he turns around and talks about it. All of them get drunk. That's what he says. All of them are winos. That's what he says. All of them are delinquents. That's what he says. Why, he breaks your wings and then calls you a cripple. He breaks your legs and then calls you a cripple. He puts out your eyes and then accuses you of not being able to see. So everything I say is the truth, the gospel truth. And once I know it's the truth, I'm going to tell it if it costs me my life. Unemployment and poverty has forced many of our people into this life of crime. But as we pointed out a couple of weeks ago, the real criminal is in City Hall downtown. The real criminal is in the State House in Albany. The real criminal is in the White House in Washington, D.C. The real criminal is the white man who poses as a liberal, the political hypocrite. And it is these legal crooks posing as our friends, forcing us into a life of crime, and then using us to spread the white man's evils and vices among our own people. Our people are scientifically maneuvered by the white man into a life of poverty. You're not poor accidentally. He maneuvers you into poverty. You're not ignorant accidentally. He maneuvers you into ignorance. You're not a drug addict accidentally. Why, this white man maneuvers you into drug addiction. You're not a prostitute accidentally. You have been maneuvered into prostitution by the American here in America that is an accident. It is part of the scientific method used by the American white man to keep us here in bondage, in ignorance, in poverty, 20th century slavery. Because we are forced to live in the poorest section of the city, we attend inferior schools. We have inferior teachers. We get an inferior education. The white power structure downtown makes certain that by the time you and I do graduate, we won't be equipped or qualified for anything but the dirtiest, heaviest, poorest paying jobs that no one else wants. They prepare us for this. We are trapped in a vicious cycle of debt. Inferior jobs, inferior housing, inferior education, which again leads to inferior jobs. We spend a lifetime in this vicious cycle, going in circles, giving birth to children who see no hope, or future, but to follow in the miserable footsteps of their poverty-stricken parents. We saw no solution to our problems. We saw no real leader among our people. But today the whole world is they're talking about the divine solution that he has received from the God of our forefathers. Not a temporary solution which will benefit only the hand-picked upper-class Negroes, but a solution divinely designed to solve the plight of the black masses permanently and forever. But the government does not want our people to listen and understand the solution that God has given, because the government is against God. I say the government is against God.
Thug life, I mean that shit. Cause these white folks see us as thugs. I don't care what y'all think. I don't care if you think you a lawyer, if you a man, if you an African American, if you whatever the fuck you think you are. We thugs and niggas to these motherfuckers. You know? And until we own some shit, I'ma call it like it is. How you gonna be a man and we starving? Go ahead. You know? And you can walk by 5 different houses, ain't a man in either one of them motherfuckers. How we gonna be a man? How we gonna be African Americans? We out here dying. We thugs and we niggas until we set this shit right. Trust me when I tell you that shit.
Young black males out there identify with thug life, but I couldn't handle it. I could handle it, but not right away.
That God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power, and I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that all we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. One day we will have to stand before the God of history And we will talk in terms of things we've done. And it seems that I can hear the God of history saying, that was not enough, but I was hungry, and ye fed me not.
Why should the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years, 300 or 400 years? Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happened to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself. And you show me one of these people over here who have been thoroughly brainwashed, who has a negative attitude toward Africa, and I'll show you one that has a negative attitude toward himself. You can't have a negative attitude toward yourself, a positive attitude toward yourself, and a negative attitude toward Africa at the same time. To the same degree that your attitude, that your understanding of an attitude toward Africa becomes positive, you'll find that your understanding of and your attitude toward yourself will also become positive. And this is what the white man knows. So they very skillfully made you and me hate our African identity, our African characteristics. And you know yourself that we have been a people who hated our African characteristics. We hated our hair. We hated the shape of our nose. We wanted one of those long dog-like noses, you know. Yeah. We hated the color of our skin. Hated the blood of Africa that was in our veins. And in hating our features and our skin and our blood, why we had to end up hating ourselves. And we hated ourselves. Our color became to us a chain. We felt that it was holding us back. Our color became to us like a prison, which we felt was keeping us confined, not letting us go this way or that way. And we felt that all of these restrictions were based solely upon our color, and the psychological reaction to that would have to be that as long as we felt imprisoned or chained or trapped by black skin, black features, and black blood, that skin and those features and that blood that was holding us back automatically had to become hateful to us. And it became hateful to us. It made us feel inferior. It made us feel inadequate. It made us feel helpless. And when we fell victim to this feeling of inadequacy or inferiority or helplessness, we turned to somebody else to show us the way. We didn't have confidence in another black man to show us the way, or black people to show us the way. In those days, we didn't. We didn't think a black man could do anything but play some horn, you know, some sounds, and make you happy with some songs, and in that way. But in serious things, where our food, clothing, and shelter was concerned, and our education was concerned, we turned to the man. We never thought in terms of bringing these things into existence for ourselves. We never thought in terms of doing things for ourselves, because we felt helpless. And what made us feel helpless was our hatred for ourselves. One of the things that made the Black Muslim movement grow was its emphasis upon things African. This was the secret to the growth of the Black Muslim movement. African blood, African origin, African culture, African ties. And you'd be surprised. We discovered that deep within the subconscious of the black man in this country, he's still more African than he is American. He thinks that he's more American than African because the man is jiving him and the man is brainwashing him every day, telling him, you're an American, you're an American. Man, how could you think you're an American and you haven't ever had any kind of American treat over here? You have never. 10 men can be sitting at a table eating, you know, dining. And I can come and sit down where they're dining. They're dining. I got a plate in front of me, but nothing is on it. Because all of us are sitting at the same table, are all of us diners? I'm not a diner until you let me dine. Then I become a diner. Just being at the table with others who are dining doesn't make me a diner. And this is what you got to get in your head here in this country. Just because you're in this country doesn't make you an American. And no, you got to go farther than that before you can become an American. You got to enjoy the fruits of Americanism. And you haven't enjoyed those fruits. You've enjoyed the thorns. You've enjoyed the thistles, but you have not enjoyed the fruits. No, sir. So I point these things out, brothers and sisters, so that you and I will know the importance in 1965 of being in complete unity with each other, harmony with each other, and not letting the man maneuver us into fighting one another. I say that again that I'm not a racist. I don't believe in any form of segregation or anything like that. I'm for the brotherhood of everybody, but I don't believe in forcing brotherhood upon people who don't want it. As long as we practice brotherhood among ourselves, and then others who want to practice brotherhood with us, we practice it with them also. We're for that. But I don't think that we should run around trying to love somebody who doesn't love us.
Also, you got the early Arab slave trade. I keep saying nobody came into Africa through African people any good. After the Romans had disgraced themselves trying to be early Christians, the Africans thought that by accepting Islam, they could get the Romans off of their back. They were right. They did get the Romans off their back. But the Arabs replaced the Romans on their back, and the Arabs are still on their back. I'm surprised that no one mentioned the book When Egypt Ruled the East by Keith Seeley. What you call Western Asia, what is Western Asia, mistakenly called the Middle East, was an extension of Africa itself. It was really Northeast Africa. And the people were interchangeable, and we seem to have neglected this very important aspect. Then, in looking at Herodotus was no fool. Herodotus was a good reporter. When you told him something he didn't believe, he said he didn't believe. But he said the tint of the complexion of the Ethiopians and the Egyptians seemed to be the same. So let us at least concede, that's not an analysis now, that's an observation. Let us concede that Herodotus at least had good eyesight.
Yeah, but you're being pimped. You're being pimped by the record executives who will allow you to do your thug life because it portrays a certain black. I mean, you've heard it,
Yeah.
that if you were just a singer, you wouldn't have the same record contracts you have.
Right.
But because you portray the thug life, the gangster rap, they've allowed you to make that money. They've allowed you to push and make your platinum.
I beg to differ. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting pimped. That's true. But just like how a woman would be, you know what I'm saying? Anybody to be pimped. You know, it's like, it's not that you get pimped. It's how long you get pimped. You know what I'm saying? Because if you really look at this situation, it is not I who's being pimped. When you look at the white kids with Raiders hats on, it's the white folks getting pimped. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm making their future. I'm writing down their curriculum. Right now, what I write in my album today, when it comes out in 2 months, that's what white kids is doing. So who really is getting pimped? What I'm writing in my raps is what the white kids is gonna be saying to their mamas and daddies when they come home. Who is getting pimped? You know what I'm saying? I'm a high school dropout. You know what I'm saying? As far as my teacher told me when I was in high school, I ain't gonna be, you know what I'm saying? I just gotta, it's going down. You know what I'm saying? It's going down. You know, everybody's getting pimped. Whether you work a 9 to 5 or whether you work for yourself, you're getting pimped by somebody. That's not the crime. The crime is how long you allow yourself to get pimped. You have to come up. Everything is a come up. Everything is a struggle. You start from the bottom, working to the top.
I asked Shakur about his feelings on people like New York Minister Calvin Butts and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who have been critical of Shakur and others for the gun-toting image many young rappers have.
There's nothing criminal about bearing arms. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. Only the press and the media make you think that a black man arming himself is illegal or criminal, or that he wants to arm himself to rob a liquor store or something. You know what I'm saying? That is for me to defend myself, and it should always be. It's just about surviving, you know, and we have to be honest about the tools that we use to survive. And why is a black life any more recoupable than a white life? You know what I'm saying? We know that they don't put the same security in the ghetto that they do in the whites in the white neighborhoods. So therefore, for me to be out here saying don't, you know, put your guns down and no violence, that's hypocritical. And if I didn't talk about the violence, everybody would act like the violence wasn't there. We as rappers bought that violence. We bought the violence that we seen on the street. We put in our records for years. And after 3-4 years, people finally starting to see it because of all the statistics that's going on in the streets. If we stop talking about it, then they wouldn't take statistics. And when they stop taking statistics, then we'd be killing each other in the street, and these white people wouldn't care no more. Only reason they care is because, you know, there's been some strays, and we just slipped over in the white neighborhoods, and there's kids in Iowa that want to be like us. You know what I'm saying? There's kids in Indiana that's trying to be like us, because they can relate too. You know what I'm saying?
You even admit it. I don't live in that neighborhood anymore. There's no real reason for you to carry a 9mm.
Don't believe that. Why? In 2 years, I've had a gun pulled on me by my limo driver, by police, by everybody. You know what I'm saying? And I better be. You know what I'm saying? I've been attacked. You ain't read the papers about these skinheads trying to blow up black churches. Why? They see me as the enemy just like y'all do. You know what I'm saying? They can come to my house and sit outside my house just like anybody else can. A skinhead. And once my life is gone, it's gone. Can't nobody give it back to me. Not the judge, not the president, not the governor, not Calvin Butts, not Jesse Jackson. They can't do nothing but come to my funeral and talk pretty about how black people suffer. You understand? And as far as Jesse Jackson, my first acting job was at the Apollo Theater when Jesse Jackson was running for president in 1984. It hurts me for him to say anything negative about any rapper because we supported him. He should support us. You know what I'm saying? As far as his image, you know what I'm saying? What was he doing? You know, he should be the last person talking about gun violence when he sat right there while Martin Luther King caught one in the neck. You know what I'm saying? Things ain't really changed that much. I swear to God, nothing I ever say is meant to be something where innocent people get hurt. Nothing I ever say is meant to be like a end all, let's go do it right now. Nothing. Everything I ever say, and if any, this is so we can set it clear, anything I ever say as it pertains to my peers and being strapped is only in self-defense. You know what I'm saying? Because right now where I'm at, the world is harsh. And I just don't got no beautiful stories. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna just be getting them ready. Because that's why I think I messed up. If somebody would have grabbed me, pulled me to the side and been like, look, Tupac, as soon as you step out here, they're gonna be at you. If somebody would have explained it to me, I wouldn't have took the same mistakes. But I made those mistakes. Now it's my job to stop somebody else from making those same mistakes. To lay it out. To lay out the real map on the world and how it is.
And how it is for Shakur is trouble. It's continuing to mount. He was just thrown off a concert tour for allegedly inciting a riot. Shakur claims his actions are just misunderstood.
I'm not coming here telling you my plight and then I walk outside and live the good life. Everything I'm saying is a warning, is a plea for help. If everybody is so goddamn worried about me, why ain't nobody came to help me? You know what I'm saying? I never wanted to be no star. This ain't my job. I don't care if everybody don't cheer for me. You know what I'm saying? If you're not cheering for me for what I'm doing, don't cheer for me. Don't cheer because you think I'm cute. You know what I'm saying? Screw that. Cheer for me for what I'm doing, for what I stand for. And when I go to jail, you should cheer louder. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm standing up for what I do. I'm not robbing nobody, not stealing from nobody. I never took nothing. Everything I do to represent my people. I do because I think this is what they want me to do.
Shakur says all the attention given to his mishaps are one-sided.
All right, this is all I want to say. For all the people that doubt me, I had no record all my life. Okay? No record, no police record, until I made a record. As my video was debuting on MTV, I was behind bars getting beat up by the police department. I got a $10 million lawsuit. They said they would settle with me and everything. You know what I'm saying? But nobody cared about that. That one blew up all in the news. They didn't see me. They did not see me on TV with my eye busted, my head busted. There's pictures of those.
In Oakland,
yes, in Oakland. You don't see them pictures. You see pictures of Tupac coming out of jail in cuffs. You don't see pictures of the police standing over me beating my brains in. You don't see that. But I see that. That's what I see. You know what I'm saying? So it's all real. And I feel like just like a woman that's raped, any woman that's raped would never, ever allow herself to be raped again. Am I correct? Any woman that's violated would never allow herself to be violated again. Same thing.
You know there are going to be people who sit here and say, how can you say that when you're faced with that charge?
That's how I can say it. We got people in my own community that will get me. Why? Because I got it. Now this girl, who I can't say her name, but if I was to say her name, 1,000 niggas all over the world would go, I put this on everything I love, on everything I love. When I was in Atlanta, I was pulled over at the gas station. Some dudes from New York pulled over next to me and told me the girl's name. They said, I know the girl that did it. They told me her name and where she's from, say she's scandalous. I can't go on TV talking about this girl, because that's what they want me to do. They want me to get on TV and talk about my black sister is a hoe, and she's a bitch, and she's a money grubber. I ain't fit to say that. I don't have to do that to show that I'm innocent. You know what I'm saying? I'm not guilty. People should look me in my eyes. They should look me in my eyes. And anybody that thinks I committed that rape should go get Brenda's Got a Baby and keep your head up.
No, this is done by those who are guilty of all those things that the counterpart of all those things you just mentioned. The white people who are guilty of white supremacy try and hide their own guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching black supremacy when he tries to uplift the mentality, the social, mental, economic condition of black people in this country. And Jews who have been guilty of exploiting the black people in this country economically, civically, and otherwise hide their guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching, of being anti-Semitic, simply because he teaches our people to go into business for ourselves and try and take over the economic leadership in our own community. And this other thing, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, what was this other?
And hatred.
And hatred. And since the white people collectively have practiced the worst form of hatred against Negroes in this country, and they know that they are guilty of it, now when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad comes along and begins to list the historic deeds, the historic attitude, the historic behavior of the white man in this country toward the black people in this country, again, the white people are so guilty that they can't stop doing these things to make Mr. Muhammad appear wrong, so they hide their wrong by saying that he is teaching hatred. History is not hatred. Actually, we are Muslims because we believe in the religion of Islam. We believe in one God. We believe in Muhammad as the apostle of God. We practice the principles of the religion of Islam, which mean prayer, charity, fasting, brotherhood. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that since the Western society is deteriorating, it has become overrun with immorality, that God is going to judge it and destroy it. And the only way black people who are in this society can be saved is to not integrate into this corrupt society, but separate ourselves from it, reform ourselves, lift up our moral standards, and try and be godly instead of try and integrate with God instead of trying to integrate with the white man, or try and imitate God instead of trying to imitate with the white man.
Who is his enemy? He'll say the Belgians. Ask the man in Kenya who is his enemy. He'll say the British. Ask the man in Morocco who is his enemy. He'll say the French. But the one thing that the French and the British and the Belgians all have in common, they're all from Europe. How could so few white people rule so many black people? This is the thing you should want to know. How could so few? The white man today will tell you that thousands of years ago, the black man in Africa was living in palaces. The black man in Africa was wearing silk. The black man in Africa was cooking and seasoning his food. The black man in Africa had mastered the arts and the sciences. He knew the course of the stars in the universe before the man up in Europe knew that the earth wasn't flat. Is that right or wrong? Then if the black man in Africa had reached such a high state of civilization so long ago, at a time when the people of Europe were crawling on their all fours, what happened to make these people, or enable these people to come out of the cave and come down into our civilization and take it over and hitch us to the plow? What happened? How did they do it? These are the things you should want to find out before you say hooray, hooray, hooray.
Because you see, they know that when the Africans made their first calendar in 10,000 BC, 10,000 BC, called the stellar calendar, and revised that in 4100 BC, the so-called pre-dynastic era. Where was Greece? Where was Etrusca, that later became Rome? They don't tell you about this, do they? They don't tell you anything about this aspect of the African, because it's not slavery. It doesn't deal with Amos and Andy. It doesn't deal with roots and novel, which they got you to believe had something to do with your history. Where were they when you were dealing with astronomy? That's the movement of the stars and the other planets related there too. And astrology, I'm not talking no nonsense about when your girlfriend planet is down in Pluto and something. That's ignorance. When Imhotep and others established the pyramid text and the Khafre text, when you go to a place called Aswan and you see how the Africans, your ancestors, dug those marble obelisks. And when you go, you always they tell you in school, and they read the beautiful love story about the Majahara who built his palace for his most beloved wife, the Taj Mahal. They didn't stop to tell you that thousands of years before that, a pharaoh by the name of Ramesses II not only built a temple out of hewn rock bigger than this place, along with one for his most beautiful and most precious wife, Nefertara. Don't mix her up with Nefertiti. Nefertiti was the wife of Amenhotep IV, who changed his name to Akhenaten. That's the 18th dynasty. I am talking about Nefertara, the wife of Ramesses II. That is the 19th dynasty. No mention about that, because they can't tell you African men did anything good for African women, much less to mention pharaohs and queens. Yet the evidence is still there. You go to Ethiopia at a place called Lalibela, and you see the rock-hewn temples, the rock-hewn churches in the side of mountain, down in the ground, engineering thousands of years before any country existed in all of Europe. You need to know it. If Dr. Martin Luther King knew what I'm talking about, he would not have gone to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to learn about nonviolence. He would have known that Gandhi read the works of Akhenaten to learn about, and he would have gone home to his native Africa to get first-hand information. But they kept the teachings from in all the university, even when he went to University of Massachusetts, BU rather, with Dr. Harmon and others up there. They didn't tell him about Akhenaten, because you see, they don't talk about Akhenaten because Akhenaten taught about monotheism. He died before Moses was born, preaching monotheism, the worship of the god Aten, A-T-E-N. He taught about the Trinity of God, and you could go at a temple called the Temple of Luxor and see on the wall the Trinitarian concept 3,000 years before Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But they couldn't teach Akhenaten. They couldn't teach these things, because then you would question what is being taught to you now in theosophy, in theology, in philosophy. Your professor of theology how Jesus got blood. Ask your professor if it was not until Michelangelo was commissioned by Pope Julius II in 1509 to draw what he believed the Holy Family looked like, that he took his uncle's son, and his uncle's wife and used them as the model, and that became Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. Up until that time, it was the black Madonna and Child, which the present Pope went back twice to his native, to worship at the feet of the black Madonna and Child. You see, the racism hadn't hit Europe yet. So it wasn't necessary to get rid of the black color of Mary, which you now say. When you don't want to say Jesus was black, you say he had no color. If he had no color, how did John the Baptist see him to baptize him? Talking about baptismal, you should go to the temples there and see baptism of the pharaohs thousands of years before Jesus. They call it purification rites. Go and see circumcisions thousands of years before there was an Abraham to be circumcised, and that to make him a Jew. Our education, quotation mark. I think that Carter G. Woodson, and I should have mentioned this man's name long ago, said it best in his book. The title explains what I'm saying: The Miseducation of the Negro. Assuming that Carter knew at that time that Negro was wrong, but he had no choice because he was fired from Howard University by a man named Mordecai Kaplan, who was the president of the school at the time, for attempting to introduce a course in African history. You see, when King Uri of Ethiopia in 5100 established the concept of nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. When Akhenaten brought his cousin Semenkari and sit him on the throne of Egypt as co-regent in the 18th dynasty so that he could pay attention to nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. Not at the destruction of his people. When Rosa Parks got up in that bus, she had no PhD, no M anything, no B anything, but she had the integrity of an African woman, that she was no longer going to sit down in the back of the bus, and she was willing to die and take somebody with her. I know these are alien talks. These are alien thoughts because you believe that praying gonna change it. No way. Praying didn't change lynching, because it still goes on. Instead of a Ku Klux Klan doing it, the government does it. And the only people in the world, we are not allowed to talk to each other for our own common interests. Everyone else, the Italians come together as Italians, the Irish as Irish, the white Jews as white Jews, but we are told we can't have anything by ourselves because it's reverse racism.
Shakur's childhood plays a large role in the man he is today. He grew up knowing little about his father and just recently mended his relationship with his mother, who was an active member of the Black Panther Party. He says much of the pain and anger he brings to his work stems from his background.
Have you ever seen, what would a Vietnam vet be like without a sergeant, without any backup, without any other soldiers, nobody but a Vietnam vet in Vietnam? When he came home, how would he be? And that's me. I had to go through all that street, war, everything, the same drugs that everybody else get turned out on. You know, where I would have been stopped short, I made it past. And here's where I am. But because I made it past, I missed some lessons. You know what I'm saying? And you can see the lessons that I missed when you talk to me. You can see where I haven't had a father when you talk to me. You know what I'm saying? You can see where I spent a lot of my time in the streets when you talk to me. Because the words that I say are not words that come from a mother's mouth or a father's mouth. It's words that comes from a pimp's mouth or a prostitute or a hustler or a drug dealer. You know what I'm saying? But to me, these were my role models.
How much of that, though, in terms of growing up without a father, sometimes not being with your mother, do you lament on and look back and say, damn, I missed something big?
everything. I know for a fact that had I had a father, had I had somebody, and I hate saying this because white people love hearing black people talk about this, but had I had a father, had I had some of these opportunities, I'd have been able to help my mother more. She wouldn't have went the road she went. I could have been a better son. You know what I'm saying? She wouldn't have went that road. It was the absence of my father. You know what I'm saying? I'm dealing with him being daddy not being there. My mother's dealing with him being my man not being there. You know, so many problems in our community that affect everything. So by me not having that, I ain't never want to hear nothing about no kind of relationships between a black man and a black woman. I knew they didn't work. Because as far as I knew, my daddy was the coolest dude out there. And my mama was a Panther. So if they didn't work, it don't work. That's how I felt. You know what I'm saying? And going out there, you know what I'm saying? It's like watching my mother just go through changes and everything. It's like my mother's my partner. She a soldier. You know, she a soldier like I'm a soldier. You know, and I watched the game that she went through. If I would have went the same way my mother went, had not she did her route and showed me where it went wrong with her. My mother always told me, don't you ever, ever just volunteer yourself to our people, because they'll use you. That's what they do. You know what I'm saying? She also told me to follow my heart and for me to be the leader.
But it's interesting to see just the change in your face, your reaction, your thought process.
That's all I ever wanted to do. Ask my mama. I wanted to go to college. I went to school all the way and was ready to go to college. The only thing that stopped me was money. The time all the kids in my school was writing applications to go to college, I didn't have no lights and no electricity. And that ain't my mama's fault. You know what I'm saying? So when I think back to that, I'm not thugging for me. I'm thugging for my family. I pay all the bills. You know what I'm saying? I feed my whole family. Wrong or right, I do. And I can't stop. You know what I'm saying? And if thugging is gonna make me $1 million, because it just got me platinum, then that's what I got to do constantly. And if it makes me feel, because right now, I feel satisfied. I don't feel like I've ever embarrassed myself or my people, you know, in nothing that I've done. And yet, no, I got the whole world fearing me. You know what I'm saying? At 23, weighing 160 pounds, you know what I'm saying? And I ain't even started. I haven't even wrote my plan out yet, and they scared. I got the vice president know who I am, the president, every cop in every city, you know what I'm saying? And I haven't even started working out a plan.
The rapper paints young black men as victims and blames much of their plight on others. So I wondered how he dealt with the fact young black men are killing each other in record numbers.
That's suicide. That ain't homicide. That's suicide. We killing each other because we killing ourselves. We not, when another man, I know, I've been in a position, it's out of our control. It's not like he wants to kill. He just doesn't want to die. You know what I'm saying? It's that situation when you got, we are living in a war zone. It's not as easy as these people are making us think, that they just got some criminal-ass black kids with guns. It is not like that. We live in hell. We live in the gutter. We got us stacked up 80 deep in one building. You know, by the time you get out your house, you strapped to protect yourself. Because you living in the same community that the police is carrying rifles and riot gear. They need them riot, excuse my language, I'm so sorry. The same reasons they need the riot hat, the riot jacket, the flak jacket, the double vest, the 9mm Glocks with extra bullets, the tear gas, the mace, all that. Who do you think the police is using that against? Dogs? Niggas. So we fighting the same villains that they fight in the street. But instead of them seeing us fighting villains in the street, we all villains.
Is your generation the one that is picking up for where the Panthers left off, saying, all right, enough is enough? The generation before us forgot about the fight. We're picking it back up.
Not only forgot about the fight, forgot about us. Yes, and we're picking it back up. But at this level, all we're trying to do is unite. And right now, as a year, we got 1 million people that's listening. Now we can tell them something. Now we can try to get them that way, and we might lose some. We might gain some, but we would never even have that audience had we not said what was real. You know what I'm saying? And the main thing for us to remember is that the same crime element that white people are scared of, black people are scared of. The same crime element that white people fear, we fear. So we defend ourselves from the same crime element that they scared of. You know what I'm saying? While they waiting for legislation to pass and everything, we next door to the killer. We next door to him, you know, because we up in the projects where there's 80 niggas in the building. All them killers that they letting out, they right there in that building. But it's better, just because we black, we get along with the killers or something? We get along with the rapists because we black and we from the same hood? What is that? We need protection too.
Finally, I want to ask you about something that someone else asked you in the interview, and I thought the answer was interesting because I think it speaks to you and your generation. A lot. Someone said, where do you see Tupac 10 years from now? You said, hey, I just want to be alive. That's real for me.
That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today. Because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I cannot die with people thinking I'm a rapist or a criminal. I can't leave until this is straight. You know, I'm not suicidal. I can't go until y'all really know what time it is. And then after that, boom, it's all over. And we can see, you know, how this shit fall. But that's how it is. And the reason being is because if I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here. Because God has cursed me to see what life should be like. If God wanted me to be this person and be happy here, he wouldn't let me feel so oppressed. He wouldn't let me feel so trampled on. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't let me think the things I think. So I feel like I'm doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? Just because I don't have nothing to pass around for people to put money in the bucket don't mean I ain't doing God's work. I feel like I'm doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? Because these ghetto kids ain't God's children. And I don't see no missionaries coming through there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing God's work. While Reverend Jackson do his up in the middle class, and he go to the White House and have dinner and pray over the president, I'm up in the hood, you know what I'm saying, doing my work with my folks. And just because I don't live there don't mean I don't go there. I got to go there.
You know what the most dangerous thing in America is, right? Nigga with a library card.
100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society. He finds himself in exile in his own land. In exile in his own land. In his own land. In exile in his own land. In exile in his own land. In his own land. 100 years later. 100 years later. 100 years later. The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society. He finds himself in exile in his own land. In exile in his own land. In his own land. The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society. The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society. "100 years later,
You know what the most dangerous thing in America is, right? Nigga with a library card.
Recession, we at war, and all we want to do is continue to be negative. It's more like, I feel like the fans from the UK show me more love than when I'm in my own country, and that's crazy. I gotta go to another country to get more love, and I don't even get this type of love. I get more love from another country than I get from my own country, and that's crazy. One thing I understand, if you're rich, you're a rich nigga. If you're poor, you're a poor nigga. If you're educated, you're a smart nigga. At the end of the day, they still look at me as a nigga. And that's something that I understand. Just truthfully speaking right here. Just truthfully speaking. And one thing you can't knock. You cannot knock my talent. No matter how much y'all say, oh, Floyd's gonna lose and we don't like Floyd, y'all can't knock my talent. When it's all said and done, when we get in that ring, I don't care what y'all write, what y'all say, it's me and him,
again,
one-on-one.
you have to be logical. You know, if I know that in this hotel room they have food every day, and I'm knocking on the door every day to eat, and they open the door, let me see the party, let me see like them throwing salami all over I mean, just like throwing food around, but they're telling me there's no food in here. You know what I'm saying? Every day, I'm standing outside trying to sing my way in. You know what I'm saying? We are hungry, please let us in. We are hungry, please let us in. After about a week, that song is going to change to, we hungry, we need some food. After 2-3 weeks, it's like, you know, give me all the food, breaking out the door. And after a year, and you just like, you know what I'm saying, I'm picking the lock, coming through the door, blasting, you know what I'm saying? It's like you hungry, you reached your level, you don't want any more. We asked 10 years ago. We was asking with the Panthers. We was asking with them, you know, with the Civil Rights Movement. We was asking, you know, now those people that were asking, they're all dead and in jail. So now what do you think we're gonna do? And we shouldn't be angry. And my raps that I'm rapping to my community shouldn't be filled with rage. You know what I'm saying? They shouldn't be filled with the same atrocities that they gave to me. In the media, they don't talk about it. So in my raps, I have to talk about it. And it just seems foreign because there's no one else talking about it.
Right. Well, playing devil's advocate, somebody might say, well, what does Tupac have? He's a movie star. He's got, you know, hit records. What does he have to complain about?
And I'm going to tell you, it's like being the last person alive, you know what I'm saying? After 3 days, you can't do anything. What can I do? Where can I go? There's no black neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, with black people who have the same amount of money as me. You know what I'm saying? There's richer and there's poorer. There's no just, you know, did a movie, got a little bit of money, living okay, black neighborhood. I have to be in a white neighborhood, so I don't fit in. That's hell. It's hell when you can't be around your peers. All my life I grew up around black people, poor people, but I can't live around poor people now because they'll rob me. And why would they rob me? Because they're starving, because there's no money here. But they're telling me, now that I made a little money, I have to move here. So it's not like no one's ever trying to deal with this section. They're just moving away from it. And we're gonna have more stars coming from the ghetto, but they're gonna all move this way. You know what I'm saying? So it's like all the society is doing is leeching off the ghetto. They use the ghetto for their pain, for their sorrow, for their culture, for their music, for their happiness, for their movies, to talk about boys in the hood. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be another I don't want to be 50 years old at a BET We Shall Overcome Achievement Awards. You know what I'm saying? Not me. You know, I want when they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther. You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us. We might not be the ones, but let's not be selfish, and because we're not going to change the world, let's not talk about how we should change it. I don't know how to change it, but I know if I keep talking about how dirty it is out here, somebody's going to clean it up.
But we can start with that, because there is where our institutions of learning has decided to start civilization. Yet the Greeks are only here from at least 1,000 before the Common Era, or before the Christian era, as you would prefer to say. Let us just, for example, cite one. And that particular person would be Hippocrates. And I'm sure that you heard of Hippocrates. And when you consider that Hippocrates wasn't born until 333 BC, or before the Common Era, yet in your education you were told that Hippocrates is the father of medicine. That's a lie. There's no way that I can say about it other than it's a lie. A lie is a lie, whether it's in the university or in the church. How could Hippocrates be the father of medicine when the first time you see him, he is in Egypt learning medicine from Africans? There are numerous papyri, medical papyri on medicine. The nearest to Hippocrates is at least 1,300 years before he was born. For example, we have what is known as the Hattus papyrus, the Evers papyrus, and now the so-called Rockefeller papyrus, the Edwin C. Smith papyrus. All of these papyri go back to as early as 3100 BC. The man who Hippocrates took an oath that he would practice medicine according to this man, this African, whom the Greeks call Aesculapius, in the Hippocratic Oath. A man by the name of Imhotep died. He practiced medicine and died 2,500 years before the birth of Hippocrates. And you are telling me that the medical school and the pre-medical historians don't know this? They don't know it because, unfortunately, Imhotep had a high visibility like myself, otherwise called black. They don't know that the Ebers Papyrus by Hatshepsut, dealing with Planned Parenthood, I said Planned Parenthood, 1,550 years before the birth of Jesus the Christ, is out there. When every medical journal in 1961 published copies of the Ebers Papyrus. And we could go on with the papyri with respect to all kinds of diseases that the Africans had produced, both in Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan and a place then called Puanit, now called Somalia. But that would be satisfactory. But let us take the kind of education that we do have. We are in a chapel, and we have been told about an immaculate conception and virgin birth. We have been told about the beginning of the world with Adam and Eve. We have been told about a man by the name of Cain who slew his brother Abel. And we have been told that all of these things only happen once. And they go back to the Old Testament, or otherwise called the Torah, or the Pentateuch, or the Chumash. Those are names for what you call the Old Testament. But we have never been told that they are only copies of stories that predated them by thousands of years. Let us put them one by one. And those who teach them, if in fact they did any research, must know their life. That is providing that they have never gone to Egypt or to Ethiopia or to Sudan to see the living proof. The writings on the tombs, the writings in the pyramids, what is called the pyramid text and the coffin text. That is providing that they have not seen the holy scriptures of the Africans of the Nile Valley, otherwise called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or as Budge called it in his translation of the hieratic writing, or the Egyptian Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night. In the temple of Setiwan, for example, at a place called Abydos, not only is there the writings of an immaculate conception 4,000 years before the story of Mary, but it is there in picture form. Are we to say that the theologians of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have never once taken a trip to Egypt, from whence these things were taken? In that same temple, you see a story of how Set-Typhon murdered his brother Osiris 2,000 years before the Jewish story of Cain and Abel. And we are told that an African from Egypt by the name of Moses, born in the city of Goshen, that's still Egypt. Egypt is in Africa, by the way. The last time I saw it in January. You heard of a place called Middle East. I don't know of any place called Middle East. That's political jingoism. But we can find that there was no Moses on Mount Horeb in the Sinai to receive any 10 commandments that had not been given before or written before in Egypt, because you could go in the book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night, the Book of the Dead, and see in what is called the Osirian drama, not only those 10, but 32 more, a total of 42, which you can also go in the temple of Ramesses VI, in the Valley of the Kings, across what is today called Luxor. And in that tomb, you would see the 42 listed commandments, or otherwise negative confession, 2,000 years before the birth of Moses. But they told you that Moses was taught. He was an Egyptian, taught in school in Egypt, and became a priest in the system. Could you have been born in the United States of America, went to kindergarten, then elementary school, junior high school, and never heard of the United States Constitution? It was equally impossible for Moses to have born in Egypt, go to school in Egypt, study an Egyptian system, worship God Amun-Ra, and never once heard of the 42 negative confession, which have in it, thou shalt not kill. I have not killed man nor woman. I have not made like that bushel. I have not this. Moses himself is charged with murder. His brother Aaron is charged with theft. 40 years before they reached Mount Sinai, then somebody had a law against theft and against murder before he reached Mount Sinai. Where did they get it? But you weren't taught anything about this. All of this information have been suppressed at a place called the Council of Jamia and the Council of Nicene in 325 AD, when Constantine, the Roman emperor, conquered North Africa, took over the role of the Christian church, which started in Alexandria with Pantheus and Boethius, not in Rome. But this too you have not been taught. You have not been taught that the three people who died first in the name of Jesus the Christ were three African women: Felicita, Nymphano, and Perpetua. Yet you know everything. You're born again. You know it all, because one can't teach what one doesn't know, or one have not learned, or one have not experienced, because there is no interest for people to go to Egypt to see anything but to go to the Holy Land. Because you have been told that unless Europeans teach you, you haven't been taught. But who told you that the first university built in all of Europe was built by Africans called Moors at the university, what is called the University of Salamanca in Spain? Check it out. Europe's first university. Not only the stones were put together like the stones in most of the building and the bricks in most of the building here. I'm not talking about that aspect of only the building. I'm talking about the educational system is nothing but a copy of the University of Djenne, D-J-E-N-N-E, of ancient Ghana, which was burnt down and rebuilt as the University of Sankore in the city of Tumbat, which the French later called Timbuktu. Then carried, as the Africans called Moors, conquered Iberia, now Spain and Portugal and southern France, and established in there the university system. And as I said before, it was not the first. The earliest of the Greeks were trained in a place called the subordinate lodge of Croton and Delphi. Subordinate lodges of the Grand Lodge in a place called Waset, which the Greeks later changed to Thebes or Thebes. The current Arabs changed it to Luxor. But did you get that in Greek philosophy? Did you get it in Greek history or European history? None whatsoever. And how did you get Hannibal Barca and his father Hasdrubal Barca and his brother, and his father rather, Hamilcar, his brother Hasdrubal? How did you receive it in the educational system? How did the textbook show it? It showed it as they were not Africans. What they said is some Phoenicians came from Phoenicia, and Carthage, which they later called Carthage, was in fact a Phoenician country. 80 people came from Phoenicia with a woman named Elisa, which Virgil called Dido or Dido in his little play about it. And those 80 changed all the Africans into Phoenicians. And thus we are taught that the Africans of Carthagenus were in fact Caucasians. It's all right when they taught me in school in Puerto Rico, I didn't know any difference. I'm born in Ethiopia, grew up in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, Cuba and Brazil. So when they were teaching me that at the University of Puerto Rico, I knew no difference, and so it went down all right. But I accidentally went to Morocco, accidentally. And find that what I had been taught in school was nothing but a pack of lies. Because I then went into the temple, I then went into the museum and found that it was totally different. But then I went on to Italy, in the Medici Museum, the Museum of Alessandro de' Medici, only to find that Alessandro was an African born in Italy. And no one had told me up to then that there were Roman emperors from Africa, such as Honorius and Septimus Severus and his son Caracalla. No one had taken time to explain to me anything about the Greeks coming to Egypt and to Nubia and to Ethiopia, depending on who they were, to receive their earliest education, those who had not gone to a little colony, a little enclave in what was then called Lebus, now called Libya, to receive their first glimpse into education taught by Africans. That the lie doesn't stop in ancient time, it continues up to today as truth. And so in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's 5. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pi being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history, they call it, prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo came from Ethiopia. Iliad and the Odyssey. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you up. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. And Reverend Bartolomeo de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola, now called Haiti and Santo Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad when some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church. and Bartolomé de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conquerors yourself in 711 under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the Rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltariq. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you'll have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, there are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. Ask ourselves, why is this so? And I said to the students today at the high school, even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet, no Adam and Eve story yet, because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC, just yesterday, when the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet, no Jehovah, because Abraham, the first Jew that brought out the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H, Amen-Ra. You still say Amen at the end of each prayer, and they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Amen was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the pharaoh, headed the north and Egypt was divided into two groups, it had gone into a civil war. And Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call it Amen-Ra, thousands of years before there was a Jehovah, Jesus, or Allah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't born until 570 of the Christian era. Pontius and Boetius, that started Christianity, wasn't born until 50 AD, according to the story. And Abraham, who started the concept of a God named Jehovah and Adam and Eve's story, wasn't born until 1760 BC. The Africans of Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia were already in their 13th dynastic period. No different than the lie they told us that the Jews built the pyramids. Which one? The little one in their bathtub? There are 72 pyramids throughout Egypt. The first one was designed engineered and built by the multi-genius, first one known in the world, Imhotep. That was the 3rd dynasty. The last one was the 6th dynasty, and the first Jew wasn't born until the 13th dynasty. You can't build a pyramid before you're born. But the myth and the lie continues. Now they're even making people from outer space build the pyramids from the top down. Those of you who are engineering knows how to build it from the top down. They took the first stone with some sky hook and connected to the cloud passing by. If you kill one European Jew in Ushkush because he is Jewish, the whole white Jewish community getting armed. But if you kill umpteen blacks, I am not supposed to say anything, otherwise I'm being racist. You see, they didn't tell you that there are black people who are Jews. So you say blacks and Jews are going to have a conference. Couldn't be blacks Jews too? Or you never heard of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews? I'm one. I know that I don't look Jewish, but they don't look Jewish to me either. They are called the Falashas, but you didn't hear anyone saying anything in America when the Italian fascists were exterminating the Falashas. Nobody said anything. And it was the forerunner to what Hitler was to come and do next. But there was no rallying cry about my people. We were 5 million when Hitler arrived, Mussolini arrived. With the help of the Pope, Pius XI, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000. But no cry. Isn't it strange that when you write and when you are taught, you hear only about a Holocaust? One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50 million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes? Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who Rhodes was. Rhodes made Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust with Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State. How many millions? 22 million were exterminated. African women pregnant were placed in the middle of roads and 3 limbs put to both arms and then cut with the horses and split them open and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans will come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island off Australia, every last African was murdered. There isn't one left. And you don't call it a Holocaust. You don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here were not from Africa, but from Barbados. The first that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. So you weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc. We have not been taught that way. Thus, we couldn't even have with Jesse an African drive for an African people. In the midst of the drive, we had to change to rainbow. And you stood here and got on your knees and begged for a holiday for Dr. King. You disgraced Dr. King. The enemy never award his foe with a holiday. The Italians got a day for a man that got lost, couldn't find his way. Columbus Day. They didn't go to anybody for the holiday. The Irish got a day for a man that killed snakes in Ireland. They didn't go to anybody for a holiday. The Poles got a day for Pulaski. They didn't go and beg a day. Why didn't you take a day? You had to go beg for even a day to worship a great man. But you failed to understand that King did not operate alone. There was a man at the same time named Malcolm X. And somebody told you that Malcolm X preached violence. How the hell you think you got here? By non-violence? How you think you got lynched? And how you think King died? By a bullet like Malcolm X. Malcolm left a woman named Betty with 6 daughters, 2 in her stomach when he died. They've never seen their daddy. King left a woman with 3 children too. What is it about one struggling for you that isn't about the other struggling for you? You'd let people decide for you who fights for you. What made Malcolm less a fighter for you than King? They both died fighting in the best way they knew for their people. None worse or none better than the other. But worst of all, you have not one day cried for Rosa Parks. And that sister started all. Just give them black sisters a chance. They will show us brothers the way.
Who taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? Because you can't get into a whiskey bottle without getting past the government seal. You can't open a deck of cards without getting past the government seal. There's a white man makes the whiskey and then puts you in jail for getting drunk. He sells you the cards and the dice and puts you in jail when he catches you using them. So he's against us because we fix it where he can't catch you anymore. We take the dice out of your hands and the cards out of your hands and the whiskey out of your head. The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violent is when someone goes to molest his woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our woman. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women.
I'm the religion that, to me, is the realest religion there is. I believe in God. I try to pray to God every night as I pass out. And I think that's, and to me, religion, my idea of religion is this. I think that if you, I learned this in jail, because I talked to every God there was in jail. I think that if you take one of the O's out of good, it's God. If you add a D to evil, it's the devil. I think some cool motherfuckers sat down a long time ago and said, let's figure out a way that we can control motherfuckers. And that's what they came up with, is the Bible. Because if the guy wrote the Bible, I'm sure it would have been a revised copy by now. You know what I mean? Because a lot of shit has changed. And I've been looking for this revised copy, and I don't see it. I still see that same old copy that they had from then. And I'm not disrespecting anybody's religion. Please forgive me if it comes off like that. I'm just stating my opinion. I feel like we get crucified. I mean, the Bible was telling us all these people did this because they suffered this much. That's what makes them special people. I got shot 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? And I got crucified to the media. You know what I mean? And I walked through with the thorns on. And I had shit thrown on me. And I had the thief at the top. I told that nigga I'll be back for you. You know what I mean? And trust me, this not supposed to be going down. I'll be back. So I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but I'm saying that we go through that type of thing every day. We don't part the Red Sea, but we walk through the hood without getting shot. You know what I mean? We don't turn water to wine, but we turn motherfucking dope fiends and dope heads into productive citizens into society. You know what I mean? We turn money. We turn words into money. You know what I mean? What greater gift can there be? So I believe God blesses us. I believe God blesses those that hustle, those that use their mind, and those that overall are righteous. I believe that your karma, everything that you do bad comes back to you. So anything that I'm doing that's bad, I'm going to have to suffer for. But in my heart, I think what I'm doing is right. You know what I mean? So I feel like I'm going to heaven. You know what I mean? And I think heaven is just when you sleep with a good conscience. You don't have nightmares. And hell is when you sleep, the last thing you see is all the fucked up things you did in your life. And you just see it over and over again. Because you don't burn. Because if that's the case, it's hell on earth. Because bullets burn. You know what I mean? It's people that got burnt in fires. That means they went to hell already. You know what I mean? All that is here. So what else? What do you got there that we ain't seen here? What, you gonna walk around aimlessly, the zombie? Nigga, that's here. You ain't been on the streets lately? You know what I mean? What heaven is now. Look, we sitting up here to live big screen. It's heaven for the moment. You know what I mean? Hell is jail. I seen that one. Trust me, this is what's real. And all that other shit is to control you. If the churches took half the money that they was making and gave it back to the community, we'd be all right. If they take half the buildings that they use to praise God and gave it to motherfuckers who need God, we'd be all right. We be all right. Have you seen some of these goddamn churches lately? It's ones that take up the whole block in New York. It's homeless people out here. Why ain't God letting them stay there? Why these niggas got gold ceilings and shit? Why God need gold ceilings to talk to me? Why do God need colored windows to talk to me? Why God can't come where I'm at, where he sent me? If God wanted to talk to me in a pretty spot like that, why the hell he sent me here then? You know what I mean? That make ghetto kids not believe in God. Why? So that's a wrong religion. I believe in God. I believe God put us wherever we want to be at. Then it makes sense that God will put us in the ghetto. That means he wants us to work hard to get up out of here. That means he's testing us even more. That makes sense. It makes sense that if you're good in your heart, then you closer to God. But if you evil, then you close to the devil. That makes sense. I see that every day. All that other spooky shit don't make sense. And I don't even believe, I'm not dissing them, but I don't believe in the brothers. I was in jail with them and having conversations. Brothers, I'm God. If you God, open the gate for me. Yeah. You know how far the sun is and how far the moon is? How the hell do I pop this fucking gate and get me free up out of here? Then I'll be a 5% for life. But never seen it. Only God can judge me. Only God can judge me.
but in mental resurrection. We believe that the so-called Negroes are most in need of mental resurrection. Therefore, they will be resurrected first. Then you test all of it. What about the resurrection? He said that our people are dead. Negroes are dead. Walking the zombies. You're the one that the book is talking about who is dead. Dead to the knowledge of yourself. Dead to the knowledge of your own people. Dead to the knowledge of your own God. Dead to the knowledge of the devil. You don't even know who the devil is. The one down inside the ground that's going to burn you after you're dead. Why, the devil is right here on top of this earth. He got blue eyes, blonde hair, white teeth, and he's giving you hell every day. And you still too dead to see it. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. We believe that the 20 million black people in America in the last days will be taught the truth. The trumpet of truth will sound in your ear. And it's being sounded today, the trumpet of truth. And this truth strikes your ear and strikes your heart. It'll open your eyes. It'll open your ears. It'll make you stand up. It'll do the same thing for you that truth did for the dry bones in the valley. Because the picture of dry bones in the valley is talking about you. The picture of Lazarus laying dead 4 days is talking about you. You are Lazarus. You are the dry bones. You are the prodigal son. You are the lost sheep. You are the people about whom the Bible is speaking who will stand up in the last day when the trumpet is sounded. Black people are waking up. Black people are standing up. Black people are rising up and they're throwing sight into that knee-shaking white man. We believe we are the people of God's choice. That's what we believe. We believe we're the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the ones going to the promised land. We don't think Jews are a part of God. No, Jews are nothing but another part of that same race of devils that come out of Europe. They didn't even come out of the Holy Land. They come out of the caves of Europe. Furthermore, we believe we are the people of God's choice. As it is written that God would choose the rejected and despised, and we can find no other person fitting this description in these last days more than the so-called Negroes in America. We believe in the resurrection of the righteous. We believe in the judgment. We believe this first judgment will take place as God revealed right here in America. The judgment will take place in America. The resurrection will take place in America. The judgment will take place in America. The separation will take place in America. And the destruction will take place in America. Doom will take place in America. Doomsday will take place right here. This is the place the Bible is talking about. When the Bible mentions Babylon, it means America. When the Bible mentions Sodom and Gomorrah, that's America. When the Bible mentions Egypt, that's America. This is Rome. This is Babylon. This is that wicked kingdom that God is going to come and set fighting to in the last day. And you're living in that day right now. And I'm glad.
In the 8th century to the 12th century, so the intellectual emergence of Europe, at a time Egypt was in its 23rd dynasty and dying after nearly 10,000 years of some forms of organized society. Europe intellectually was just being born. And I further maintain that Europe in general had nothing to do with the creation of Rome and Greece, and yet the challenge of Rome and Greece created Europe, because they were scattered tribes, and the challenge of Rome and Greece brought them together, and they became a people strong enough to create a state. I maintain that there was no Europe. You're giving Europe credit for things that happened before the first European war. Shue lived in a house that had a window. And I'm saying that you have not read, not just Massey, Joe Massey, his European disciple, Churchward, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, the Origins of Religions, and his extensive work on Freemasonry. You've not read the American disciple of Massey, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, is Who is This King of Glory? One of the best written books on the Christ story, when he proves that the basis of European spirituality was taken directly from Africa.
My point was going to be that the most recent scholarship about the genesis of those two oral epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, points in fact in another direction to influence, and that is in fact the Hittite Empire, whose documents we can read very easily, and there may well be independent confirmation of the historicity of some form of a Trojan War in those documents. And so what I'm really asking is, why is it that we're just really looking in one direction when we're talking about the origins of Greek civilization?
When Alexander entered Egypt, he wrote home to his mother and said that he at last reached the land where the Greek gods began, Apollo and Zeus. And he wanted to consult one of the great African teachers of oracles. And the oracle asked, how old is this man? He said, 32. They said, in 20 years, maybe he'll be wise enough to ask me a question that I care to answer. Very clear when the Hittite Empire came, I know what damage they did, because I maintain that every people who came into Africa, Greeks, everything from modern day Englishmen, everybody that came into Africa did Africa more harm than good. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that Africa owes nothing to outsiders in regard to development, because all of them declared war on African culture, war on African civilization, war on African ways of life. They began to bastardize Africa and confuse and create a kind of historical schizophrenia that the Africans had even gotten rid of to this very day. And they created whole words that did not previously exist, like Middle East. Middle from what?
The so-called Negro community has shocked the white man by resisting all efforts to divide us. I think that you and I should continue to shock him by staying and working together in unity. Despite religious, political, economic, or educational or social differences, let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America. Here, your mother is being raped, and you're not supposed to be emotional. Your women, please, your women can't walk the street without some cracker putting his hands on her, and you're not supposed to be emotional. If you say that you're fed up, if you teach the Negro, people don't even know their own name. Why? Because he took it away from them. Please. 20 million black people don't even know their own language. Why? Because he took it away from them. 20 million black people who don't even know the history of their ancestors. Why? Because he took it away from them. And if you try and tell them how thoroughly and completely they've been robbed, he says you're teaching hate. That's something to think about. Today you are coming out of college. You're coming out of the leading universities. You're trying to go in a good direction, but you don't know which direction to go in. And if somebody tries to take you right to the root of your problem, they say that that man's a hate teacher. If I ask why should the senators in Washington, and then again if we tell you that Negroes are being hung on the tree or being shot down illegally, unjustly, and those Negroes should do something to protect themselves, you say you're advocating violence. The white man is tricking you. He's trapping you. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in South Vietnam. Please. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in Berlin. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he didn't say get nonviolent. He said, praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition. But when someone attacks you, when someone comes at you with a club, when someone comes at you with a rope, when someone comes at you with a gun, despite the fact that you've done nothing, he tells you, suffer peacefully. Pray for those who use you despitefully. Be long-suffering. And how long can you suffer after suffering for 400 years? So I just want to clear up that little point right there, because he says that we play on your emotions. And when you turn on your television tonight, or your radio, or read the newspaper, they're going to tell you in that paper that I was playing on your emotions. Imagine you, a second-class citizen. That's not getting emotional, it's getting intelligent.
There's no future for people who deny their past. My foreparents, my grandparents, my mother, my father did not suffer and die to give me an education to slight, oppress, or discourage my people. Because whatsoever education I acquired out of their sacrifice of over 300 years, I shall use for the salvation of the 400 million black people of the world. And the day when I forsake my people, may God Almighty say there shall be no more life for you. I unequivocally rejected the racist assumption of much white American Christianity, namely that God had created the black man inferior and that he had intended Negroes to be a servant class, hewers of wood and drawers of water. Well, I predicated my view of man on the doctrine. If I die in Atlanta, my work will only just then begin. For I shall live in the physical or the spiritual to see the day of Africa's glory. When I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, the black, and the green around me, for in the new life I shall rise up with God's grace and blessings to lead the millions up the heights and the triumph that you well know. Look for me in a world when there is storm. Look for me all around you, for with God's grace I shall come back with countless millions of black men and women who have died in America, those who have died in the West Indies, and those who have died in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own to make ourselves free men. Our great scholars, having passed through the colleges, the universities, have thrown away the blessed record. Babylon did it. Assyria did it. France under Napoleon did it. Germany under Prince von Bismarck did it. England under America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million black people can do it. If you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you will die. You race of cowards, you race of imbeciles, you race of good-for-nothings. If you cannot do what other men have done, what other nations have done, what other races have done, then you had better die. If others laugh at you, return the laughter to them. If they mimic you, return the compliment with equal force. Because they have no more right to dishonor, discredit you in manhood than you have in dealing with them. Honor them when they honor you. Disrespect and disregard them when they vilely treat you. Their arrogance is but skin deep, an assumption that has no foundation in morals or in law. They have sprung from the same family tree of obscurity as we have. Their history is as rude in its primitiveness as ours. Their ancestors were running wild in living in trees of branches like monkeys as ours. They made human sacrifices, ate the flesh of their own dead and wild meat from beasts for centuries, even as they have accused us of doing. Their cannibalism is more prolonged than ours. When we were embracing the banks of the Nile, they were still drinking blood out of the skulls of their conquered dead. After our civilization had reached the noonday of progress, they were still living in holes with bats, rats, and other insects and animals. After we had already unfathomed the mystery of the stars and reduced the heavenly constellation to minute and regular calculus, there were still backwoodsmen living in ignorance and in blatant darkness. The world is indebted to us for the benefits of civilization. They stole our arts and sciences from Africa. Then why should we be ashamed of ourselves? Their modern improvement to be reflected and resurrected by our generation and our posterity. Why should we be discouraged if somebody laughs at us today? Who's to tell what tomorrow will bring forth? Did they not laugh at Christ, Moses, Muhammad? Was there not a Carthage, Greece, and Rome? So we see and have changes every day. So pray, work, be steadfast, and be not dismayed. Because as the Jew is held together by his religion, The white races by the assumption and the unwritten law of superiority. The Mongolian by the precious tie of blood. Likewise, the black man must unite in one grand racial hierarchy. Our union must know no clime, no nationality. But let us all hold together in every country, in every clime, making a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Let no voice but your own speak to you from the depths. Let no influence but your own rouse you in time of peace and time of war. Hear all, but attend only to that which concerns you. Your allegiance shall be to your God, your race, your country. Remember that the Jew in his political and economic origin is always first a Jew. The white man is first a white man under all circumstances, so you can do no less. Be black, buy black, think black, and all else will take care of itself. Let no one inoculate you with evil doctrines to suit his own conveniences. Charity begins at home, so first to thyself be true, and thou canst not then be false to no man. Because God and nature first made us what we are. And out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. Let God and the sky be our limit and eternity our measurement. There is no height to which you cannot climb without the active intelligence of your own mind. Mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds. And today, being scientifically the weaker race, you shall treat others only as they treat you. But in your homes and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher development of science to your children. And make sure that we have a race of scientists par excellence. For in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. Never forget your God. Remember that we live, work, and pray for a binding racial hierarchy, whose only natural, spiritual, and political limits shall be God and Africa at home and abroad. With God's dearest blessings, I leave you for a while. One love.
Marcus, Mosiah, Harvey.
Everything ebbs and flows. Civilization climbs, rises, and then it declines. But most people accept the decline of a civilization based on modern time. 200 years, 300 years.
African history, from Pharaoh to Negro. We want to kind of give an overview of how Africans went from a pharaonic mastership to projects.
Because the Greek period is probably the first time when civilization changed hands. We're going to clip it. Before we do that, we need to clear up this Hyksos thing. Because we think that the Hyksos period, which was about 100 years after the fall of the Old Kingdom, we keep thinking that that's a foreign people. And all it was some pre-dynastic Egyptians who used to rule prior to the dynastic Egyptians coming back for one last time and taking the state again. So we talk about a family fight or changing hands of the same people. And that's documented in Jeremiah's Book of the Beginnings. So they call them the Shepherd Kings. But that was nothing but the pre-dynastic Egyptians, because the Shepherd Kings worshiped Set. So how could Set, a primary Egyptian deity, be worshipped by a foreigner that's coming in and invading? No, we're talking about the pre-dynastic period. Set was the primordial god. And then the dynastic came in, and it was called the Ammonites. And they venerated Ammon. And after that, usually when a civilization come in, the god that precedes that civilization, they usually turn that god into the devil, or the adversary. And I think we have to rethink this whole Set and Osiris thing, because these are polarities. Because if you notice, if you see pharaohs, a lot of pharaohs are standing between Horus and Set, or Osiris and Set. So when we go back, we can't even look at the deity system or the mythology and try to reference it with biblical things, you know, God, devil, this, that, you know. The concepts was different. Sometimes we substitute, we try to look at these ancient principles with a modern mind. And it didn't mean that a lot of times. We'll get into some of that. But they say when you get to so many years, there's a whole other group of principles that preceded that. So it's incalculable time.
And these were African people.
These are African people. You see, these are African people. Now remember now, because a lot of times, sometimes if we don't have documents on it, doesn't necessarily mean it didn't exist. It's just that you had traditions where there were oral traditions. And we see that now, what's left over with the griots. You see what I'm saying? Because we had detailed files. You see. And so it was nothing, if your brain, you know, usually now we need the writing and stuff because we only use, what they use, how many, 10% of the whole brain now in the modern society? Yeah. 5%? Well, back this time, what about if you had complete detailed files and you used all of your brain? That means you could store knowledge and information for thousands and thousands of years. As a matter of fact, we can say that the dynastic period, or what they call a monumental period, when they started writing down these things on the temple walls, they were basically downloading information, putting it into metadata from their brains, from their genetic memory banks. It's a bank. You see, genetic memory bank. So when you see all of that grandiose stuff you see in Kemet on those walls, and like John Henry Clark said, they stomped their foot, they wrote about it. But this stuff was coming from inside out. You see, so when you're talking about history, when you're talking about history, we're talking about a phenomenal amount of time. Like in so many words, when we have these concepts, a lot of people look at our history and think it's a tragedy. And they asked Dr. Ben this question back in 1991. Well, if we were so great, why did we fall? And Dr. Ben said, no, time ran out. But they're still thinking on a modern thing based on time, where civilization is only 200 years. You do good if you get 300 years out of a civilization, because they ebb and flow, they rise and decline so fast. But if you understand that the ancient Egyptians said we got 10,000 years of, this is Manetho's history, of 10,000 years of dynastic and pre-dynastic rule. And they say, well, who used to rule before then? They say that's when a whole bunch of gods used to rule. So that's a whole nother period of us in even a greater stage that we declined from on into the monumental phase. So when we got to the monumental phase, when we started building to make the actual monuments, it meant that we started deteriorating in a particular aspect based on memory, which means this: we could no longer calculate thousands and thousands and thousands of history in our brains, because it's just like any race that stays around for thousands and thousands of years. It's just like an old person gets senility, senile. So what we did is we started making records, you see, to calculate the detailed files that was in our brains, the detailed files of history, and put them on the monumental phase and the papyrus phase. So the simple fact that we would have this stuff when we eventually run out of this time and become what they call laggards. It just means a person that's been around so long until it goes into remission. It goes into a dormancy state. And that's what civilizations do. This guy, Maurice Carterell's book, Tutankhamun Prophecies, tells a story on how when a civilization rises, the sun emits a certain amount of rays for that civilization's melatonin levels to rise to a certain level, and they are able to do all of this great stuff for so many years, probably shorter now with the civilization, but thousands of years for us, because we're not with us on the planet. So we do these great things and build these monuments and do all this godlike stuff, because the sun is beaming a certain ray to raise that civilization up based on the melatonin levels. And then when everything down here ebbs and flows, when it's time for that race to go to another civilization or go do something else and stuff, the rays emit someplace else and the melatonin levels fall. And that person goes into dormancy because melanin is nothing but records, Akashic records. The word Akash means blackness. It's called Siddhakash. So in so many words, what we're talking about here with us, fortunately, it lasted for thousands and thousands of years. So when Dr. Ben said, time ran out, he was not talking about 200 years. You see what I'm saying? He was talking about taking a recess after dominating the earth and dominating history. You see what I'm saying? And when I say domination, I'm not talking about dominating over people. I'm talking about dominating civilization. Dominating history at a certain point. Then it's time to go to a recess. So we can first say that this recess started happening with the influx of the Greeks. But I take another history. There's other things that's actually happening now, because if we were masters and we knew, because we do have papyruses, we have the Hermetic text and all this type of stuff that was translated into Latin and Greek. It said that we knew we was going to decline and go in this dormancy state 5,000 years before it happened. So if you knew something was going to happen 5,000 years before that time, then you prepare for that. And this is where the Greek stuff comes in. We look at sometimes history, and we look at history looking back, but we don't know the concepts of what the people was actually doing when they was actually going through that particular history. So let me give you another take on what I mean by that. I think that the Greek period and the Roman period was a necessity. Now, this is what I mean by that. First of all, when I asked the question in the spirit realm, I asked the question, well, why did you let the Greeks into the Egyptian educational system, Egyptian educational system? And the first thing I asked was, why did you let white people into the Egyptian educational system? They say, no, the spirit realm say, no, we never let white people into the educational system. I said, but you let the Greeks in. They said, yes. Then what are they trying to say? They're trying to say that the Greek civilization was a black civilization. Now, we do know now that they just convened in the late 1990s. They wrote a book called East Face of Helicon. These are Oxford of Cambridge. And they're saying that the Greek mythology, now this is different. Now, Greek philosophy came from the Egyptians, or the Kamites. Greek mythology came from the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians is where you got Carthage and later on Libya, that part of Africa. Those were pre-dynastic Egyptians.
Black.
And if the Greek mythology in the first book of fiction is Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, then you have to add, and they said, and we can trace the Hesed's theogony, which gives you your Greek mythology. And the people at Oxford University in 1999 or 1998 concluded that this stuff origins comes from the Phoenician, which they even traced Athena. Now, Athens is supposed to be the great citadel of Greece, one of the central places that is named after Athena, Athens. Well, Athena is a god that they trace from Libya, which would be modern-day Libya, earlier Carthage, and even earlier Phoenicia, which means that it goes right in there. If they said that the Greek mythology came from Phoenicia, and they traced the Athena to Libya, and Athena is an Egyptian god called Neith in Egypt, and she's the form of Maat, and they're now calling her, celebrating her as an African goddess, and she's supposed to be the central goddess of Greece. it meant that the civilization of Greek had to be a Phoenician civilization. Up until the point that they entered Egypt by the time that the Ptolemy period.
Yes.
Those were black people. So now, somewhere in the last 2,000 years, we got the Europeans that came in and usurped the black culture.
Now, where did these Europeans come from?
Well, Indo-Europe. You see what I'm saying? And see, this is some stuff about history that we have to understand something. Because if the Greek period was actually black, and you can go to Greece today, and here go again, you can go there and they sequester these people, the original people of the land. I met a Greek that was darker than me. And he said, my people have been on the land for thousands of years. When they went to Iraq, when they had the Iraqi war, the Washington Post had to print an explanation of why there's these black people in Iraq, you see, that's been there. Fallujah and all these particular places in Iraq, it's been there. So so when the soldiers started asking these questions, well, what are these black people here? They had to print something on how these people migrated out of Africa. You see what I'm saying? When we know that ain't nothing but Northeast Africa, Iraq, Arabia, all of that. You see. So when but they had to print this thing in the Washington Post because they got black people there. You see. And so when the soldiers asked these questions, well, what are these black people doing here? They had to make an African migration to cover up the fact that that original land was black people, and black people still live on that land. Where they live in Israel, you see what I'm saying? Where they even live as far as Vietnam. You see what I'm saying? You see. So the point I'm trying to make here is, we even have to question that. Take for instance. Well, let me give you one other thing that I want to do to clear this up about the Egyptians and their relationship with the Greeks. Another faction of African people. There's some books called the Alexandria Projects that came out in the early 90s. And so what they wanted to do is they said, well, we want to try to get as much stuff that we know that we benefited from the Library of Alexandria, which the Library of Alexandria was nothing but a consortium of works that came from the temples to build one central library during the time of Cleopatra and the time of the whole Greek thing. You see. So what happened was they convened and had these conferences, and they had these books that came out. These Alexandria product books that came out, and they mentioned something in there. The reason why several doctrines had to be handed over to the Greeks is because they understood one thing. They understood that hieroglyphics or metanetta was going to be a dead language for close to 2,000 years, for over 2,000 years. So, understanding these priests, understanding that this stuff was going to be a dead language, they had to give certain things to the cultures that would be later cultures, that these later cultures would give the information that will fall in the hands of younger cultures, even younger cultures than the later cultures. So the Egyptian priests understood we have to further this particular information, which eventually went to the Moors. So let me go back to this so you can understand this. In this Alexandrian conference that they had, they came up with the truth in the early 1990s. They said that a 100-year period of Greek rule, 1 to 200 year period, mostly about 100 years, they did one thing. They literally translated metaneta, or hieroglyphics, at the Temple of Dendera, the Temple of Isis, Temple of Esna, a Temple of Komombo, and some Ptolemy temples, and the Library of Alexandria. The Egyptian priests. Now, how can a Greek person, how can a person from another culture know what the Canaanites are thinking if it's not their language? In order for this stuff to be translated and transferred to the Greeks, it was the Egyptian priests. So for a 100-year period at these particular temples and at the Library of Alexandria, what they did is they translated the metaneta principles, doctrines, and all of the knowledge, a great deal of it, because part of it burned, the Library of Alexandria burnt down twice. But central pieces they had to get off of the mainland of Kemet, and they translated metaneta into Greek, Latin, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic, and all of the central Hebrew, all of the central languages that would be the later day languages that would go out for the future. So that entire area, they translated, the Egyptian priests for 100 years, they translated these particular texts because they understood that metaneta wouldn't survive. You see what I'm saying? And so even the people at the Alexandrian conferences that knew this admitted this in the 1990s. Now even Walter Williams said that the reason, he said that a lot of the cultures around there, they had language they can speak, but they didn't have scripts. So Latin was created by so they would go to Kemet, which was the central place of education. And these cultures would travel to Kemet. And they would say, well, listen, here's a script that's going to go along with your language. You see, to go along with your language. So the Egyptian priests created scripts, which would be Latin, Greek, Hebrew, or what have you. They created scripts for the central people around that area. Arabic, you see, Arabic. All of these particular texts were nothing but inventions of the Egyptian mystery systems. So Walter Williams talked about that, how they didn't have languages. They would go to Kemet and they would give them scripts to go along with their languages. You see what I'm saying? But on the other hand, what they did do with all of these texts, they translated these actual texts from metaneta into these central languages. And that's what the Greeks were there for. They were there for now. And then they also knew that the Romans was coming, which the first years of Rome, the Romans tell you, we're nothing but a spinoff or a later day culture of the Etruscans. Now we got statues of the Etruscans look like Isaac Hayes. And Etruscans was a matriarchal culture. So even that, you see, you know it's a black culture. Right. So the Romans, so I want to get this straight now. So what we see as central Greek stuff was intentionally given to the Greeks by the Egyptian priests by translating the stuff into Greek and also into Latin. Then the Romans came in, which was a culture that the original Romans were black people, and pretty much like Dr. Asa Hilliard said, and a lot of these scholars, if we was to transport ourselves back to ancient Rome, just like if you go downtown Manhattan, you will see most of the people you would see would be white. But if you go to Harlem, most of the people you see is black. Ancient Rome used to look like Harlem. Because the culture was so old and it had ruled for so, well, they had been a part of civilization so old, black people, Africans, until the central people that you would actually see would be a sea of blackness. So when you see these epic movies that they have, and you see one or two black people in the crowd of a whole sea of white people, in Ben-Hur and all these types of Roman movies, Spartacus and different things like that. If you was to actually go back to that particular time, it would be groups of white people, patches of Europeans that migrated into a central black culture. Or you would have a group of people that came together as a Roman Senate and dominated and started ruling over a wide body of people. So it would be like South Africa. The masses of the people are black, but they got these rulers that migrated in. You see what I'm saying? But here go again, we looking at stuff in the modern mind, because I got pictures of Roman families that's black to this day. If you go to Rome, they got nappy hair. You see what I'm saying?
How then was the culture of the Romans so different from that of their predecessors if they were still black people, Egyptian people?
Okay,
it's culture and you know,
the culture. Now remember, now some of this culture started. It wasn't the central people of the land that was running it. It was these usurpers, just like you would have in South Africa, that had come in. You see what I'm saying? That had come in and started imposing things. Now let me give you an example. They talk about Roman genius, and they did this, the bathhouses and the aqueducts and all of this kind of thing. They said basically the Romans benefited from when they would go into places in Africa and around the ancient world and take slaves, and those slaves would take their technology, they bring them back, and they would use their technology to build Rome. So even from the buildings and from anything they did, it wasn't the actual Roman people that did this. This was the people that they colonized. You see, or extrapolated. And these geniuses around the ancient world would come in and build the Roman engineering. You see, the Romans didn't do nothing, but it was just a small body of people that didn't know how to do but one thing: kill people and have people being killed for recreation in the Colosseum. You see what I'm saying? But here's a people that knew how to acquiesce certain material that they had gotten from the ancient people. So, give you a classic story. A classic story was that they were dominating the Hebrew people. And at that time, Hebrew people were black people. The white Jew didn't come into the picture until Spain. He was converted into Judaism. Lower Egypt, which is Upper Egypt, and Upper Egypt is Lower Egypt. You see what I'm saying? So they called the bottom part of Egypt, going into Ethiopia, that was called Upper Egypt. The top part of Egypt they called Lower Egypt. The Lower Egyptians later on became your Hebrews. So we still talking about a branch of Egyptian family. Because even in Hebrew mythology or Hebrew lore, they say that Mizraim is Egypt, and that's one of the tribes of Egypt, tribes of Israel. Then you get the word Israel, Isis, Ra, and El, or Al, because one of the names for Horus is Al. So Israel is Isis, Ra, and El, because Ra is also interchangeable as a form of Osiris, because Osiris is the hidden god. When you get the word Amen Ra, Amen means hidden. So Isis, Ra, and El, son, Horus, Israel. You see what I'm saying? What we're talking about, nothing, just other branches of our family. Whether it's Phoenician, whether it's all of this type of stuff, whether it's Sumerian, we talking about nothing that was not black. Everything was black. Now, in dealing with this, when the Romans was ruling over Israel, parts of Israel in Palestine, Jerusalem, what have you. At that time, in order for the people at that time, so they talked about the Roman Senate and the first, and the Greeks and the Romans was the birthplace of democracy. But all those are later concepts, and those are concepts that was given by the Senate. But the actual people of that land, if you didn't have a central religion or a central system of spirituality, the people would rebel. So what happened was they had these Hebrews in the area that had a proud tradition of whatever they was into based on their religion. Mm-hmm. So the Roman citizens is going, look, we favor them because these people have a central way of worship, a central way of life based on their religion or based on their system of spirituality. At that particular time, the Roman mythology of Romulus and Remus had fallen into disrepair because the Roman emperors was telling everybody that they were the gods. So you worship Caesar. So as a result, after a couple of 100 years, the actual central theme of mythology started falling into disrepair. Okay. And they knew that the Roman people would start to rebel. But then they started seeing the Roman people gravitating to around a new offspring of Hebrewism at that particular time, which was early Christianity. Which is different from the Christianity that the Romans did. I'll tell you that in a minute. But they were going to, it was Gnosticism and the Hebrew thing, and the central people in the culture started looking at people outside of Rome as a central aspect of spirituality, and if Rome couldn't convince the people to follow Caesar, then the people would rebel, and Rome would fall. So Rome said, look, we have to get a central religion. They say now, the Egyptians invested in Greece with all these texts. We took over Greece, so now we own all of the texts. Mm-hmm. So what they did was, they knew that some of the things that the early Christians and the early Hebrews was dealing with wasn't nothing but Egyptian mythology and Egyptian science anyway, and they owned all of those particular texts. And they got together with a series of conferences and put together what we call the Central Christianity now. The only thing was the Central Christianity had a deeper discipline that the Hebrews and those particular early Gnostics and stuff went by. And the Romans say, well, look, some of these things, like not eating pork, or not being able to drink, or certain things, and some of these disciplines, they say, well, look, we will put in the new religion to accommodate the Romans who was used to gluttony. You see, same thing happened in the period of when they was trying to get the European, after the Romans usurped the Christianity and tried to get the Europeans to follow Christianity. The Europeans said, well, look, we'll follow Christianity, but we got to take our festivals and our different practices. You got to incorporate them into Christianity. So all these winter solstice and these festivals later on became Christianity, Christmas, and some of these festivals that the Europeans had around that time, they just usurped them and put them into the Christian holidays, or made them into Christian holidays. But if you trace them back, if you trace them back, you will see that they were pagan in that particular way, which was some of these festivals. Right. So as a result, Rome had to make a central religion of the state, but they had to make a religion that can accommodate the masses of Rome. Just like now, it's easier to be a Christian than a Muslim, or either a Hebrew, or the Jewish thing later on. Why? Because Christianity, you get to do certain things. Basically, you can do the hell you want as long as you ask the Lord to forgive you. Right. You see, and that accommodates. That's why we ask the question, well, if you don't even supposed to eat pork, why do Christians eat pork? Because they said that what the Romans, it goes all the way back to Rome, what the Romans did for the Roman citizens, and they said it was also the Pauline doctrines. You see, Paul was a Roman citizen. Paul was also an agent for Rome.
Right.
You see, so he fashioned a Christianity without the strict doctrines so that the Roman people could acquiesce it. You see what I'm saying? And that's what Central Christianity is about, is something that is designed for Roman consumption and later on European consumption.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? European consumption. Because the African way of it, you start getting into ways of life. Certain things you don't create. And we see this when we see the Christianity. We even see this when we see Judaism, which is ancient. It's a spin-off of ancient Hebrew. It's just that we don't know what them Jews do, but they got all these strict rules and stuff. Well, stuff got to be kosher. You see what I'm saying? We don't eat no shellfish. You see, so different things like that. But the Romans, they made it so, hey, it could be a party. We can go to the party with this. You see, now going back to the...
Let me ask you though, when they were killing Christians,
right?
These were black people they were killing.
There were black people they was killing, and these were the people that they was usurping their religion from.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? See, they was killing the ones that said, no, it's just like this. They say, look, we're trying to take this religion. But if we got some people that's got practices that's different than the Romans, we got to take them out if we're going to make this religion central and conducive to us. So the ones that they were killing was the original Christians. They're saying that the original Christianity don't even resemble the Christianity that we have now, because original Christianity was a spin-off from the Hebrew aspect, which had a lot of codes and laws. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those sects that they were killing, it wasn't they were killing Romans, or they were killing people that had the same faith. No, they was trying to cover up the fact that there was groups of people that had another indigenous way of worshiping. And they had to get rid of this because the Pauline doctrines had much more pseudo type of practices that the Roman people could get with. You got to realize, we're talking about people that used to go to coliseums just to see black people getting killed. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we talking about people like Caligula, with all kind of perverted sex acts and stuff like that. And we talking about people where a central part of them was gay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And if we got to have a new religion, we're going to have a new religion that can accommodate that gay stuff. And that later on became the Catholic Church. Now, the original Hebrews say, if a man don't have no kids, may he rot. But all of a sudden now the doggone priest went from patriarchs of having 100 head of children and wives to you can't have no wife. And all that is some type of central way to accommodate homosexuality. Mm-hmm. That from the Greeks and the Romans, it was asexual. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You see, so a lot of these things, a lot of this stuff that we have coming down to us, but now you must understand this though. You must understand this. Now, if you look at history from, let's say, if you're out in space and you're looking at it as a central point, it might not be as tragic, but it's personal to us because we got the rough part of it. But if you try to look at how the world goes, and let me give you an example. The spirit world told us one time that the Bible had to come into existence of a lot of moral code or ethics for the Europeans coming up from the lethargy of of barbarism. So they had to have a code book because they didn't have the type of rites of passages, whereas in Africa, you just didn't do things because you were raised in a society. It has rites and passages. The stuff is not heard of. You see? Whereas these people were coming out of barbarism and they didn't have the type of rites and passages. So they needed a book that they could go to the book and say, don't do this and don't do that. And later on that became the central part of the religion as a code of ethics. But in all honesty, that was a rites of passage for the Europeans. So in so many words, they needed that book. The Bible was central. Look what they did when they got the Bible and how they killed the world. Can you imagine that they didn't have that? You could just imagine when the Romans got out of pocket, threw away their religions. They don't deal with Zeus, which is Jupiter at the time. They don't deal with that. You know, they get to the point whereas the Senate and Caesar is God. And look what they could do just by not having a code of ethics. You see what I'm saying? Not having a code of ethics. So a lot of these things that went on, the reason why the Christianity had to come up out of that, it wasn't written for us. It wasn't for our history. It was for later day Europeans. Now, dealing with that, we have to understand this. Looking back to the ancient Egyptians. Looking back to the ancient Egyptians. First of all, I want to say this about Rome. Rome had to come into being so that even the Africans could have a central experience of living with white people later on. So the Rome had to come in and be brutal, because even what's the name said it. Look, he said Hannibal's father. And Hannibal's father is called a Moor. Even Hannibal's father said, look, those people, the Romans, are people that coming in and you'll have to deal with them. But what he was trying to say here is that you're going to have this experience. And what I mean by that is this. To this day, black people are at a disadvantage of dealing with white people because of the simple fact that we think that white people think like us, and they don't. You see, we think in a humane way, and we always make the mistake saying, well, this white man, he's gonna deal with this like I would deal with it. And we run up and butt, as they say down south. Because the simple fact, we don't understand this man has a whole nother mindset. You see what I'm saying? He has a whole nother mindset. You see, our morality is not based on laws and code of ethics. Our morality is based on us being the original humans. Certain things we didn't do. You see what I'm saying? Because we were the blueprint of humanity. Right. We were humanity. So they were saying, look, there's going to be a whole lot of non-human activity. And when you say non-human, let's clear this up. Non-African activity. You see what I'm saying? It's going to hit the world. So Rome has to come into being to be this brutal mirror so that we can have some type of calculation on how to deal with these people. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. Let's say you got a whole bunch of wild animals. You got to put them in a cage, or you got to put them in an area. You got to see what eats this and what eats that, and experiment with them just to see how these people are going to be. You see, now we know that the Egyptians already knew, because we got text, the text this guy Alan H. Gordon, Egyptologist, wrote on these texts. It's a text in French called Abduction Extraordinaire. Never was translated into English, but it says that it talks about these people. He said these people that live in Europe with these mountains, that their way of communication is not a clear one because they're always grumbling. Because they were saying they even had to be taught how to talk, how to speak. Count Varney talked about that in Ruins of Empire. But in this Egyptian text, they said that these people are always grumbling. They have a reprehensible sex act, which means, you know, whatever got a hold, it don't matter. They can even fuck animals. These are the Egyptian texts. They're over in France and stuff. I was lucky to own one of these because a book came out called Set, the God of Confusion by T.H. Valdi. It's in most libraries, it's in most college libraries, but it was never published as far as a book for central publication. It's mostly in college libraries and stuff like that. You know, the colleges got books that they never publish to the public. They're only published for the colleges. And this book, Set, the God of Confusion, they actually have these texts from France in there. Where they talk about these people, you know, and they say these people do not announce the day of battle. So you have to understand what they're trying to say. They say these people here are unfair. You see, if you have a disagreement, you're all going to come together and you're going to disagree, have the right to disagree. These people here will kill you without you even knowing that you had a problem with them, or they had a problem with you. So it goes into all, it's what these texts are trying to say in the Egyptian terms. And these texts may be about 3,000-4,000 years old. And what they were trying to say, they was looking at the Europeans and all, you know what I'm saying? And they were saying, you know, these people, you know, these people are not, they were trying to tell the people, because these were in religious texts, don't look at these people and say that they got the same type of mindset that you have as a human mindset. This is something new that's coming to the earth. So by the time the Romans came, that's why Hannibal and them fathers said, you're going to have to deal with these people. But Hannibal went in and he kicked their ass. They said in one day battle, he killed 70,000. And he kicked their behind, and they said but this is what he did, to show you the mindset. Because the Europeans now looking at this said that he came all the way to the gates of Rome. And they said he turned around and went home. They wanted to know, they can't understand, these war generals studied him. And they wanted to know, they couldn't understand, why did you go in and take Rome? Like they would have done. If they come in for conquest, they're going to conquer it. You see what I'm saying? And they're going to be there for a couple of 100 years until they fall weak. So they're saying, why didn't you take Rome like they took the Indians or Native Americans over here? Or like they took South Africa? Why didn't you come in? You had them beat. But what they didn't understand, and to this day, these European generals can't understand why he did his battle, he proved his point, and then he went the fuck home. They couldn't understand why he didn't use Rome as a weapon, as a situation of conquest. It's because that's not his nature. That wasn't his nature to conquer Rome. What he was trying to do was kick them in the ass so he could fortify Carthage for a few more years. You see. And so, you see, so it's a lot of things. Which later on, so in so many words, Rome had to be so that we could have the experience of what atrocities would come, you see what I'm saying, with later European cultures. Which leads us to the Egyptian priests again, because they did it twice. They say we got to further this information to Greece and Rome. And then during the time of Muhammad's invasion into Egypt, the Egyptian priests once again said, we have to take this information to Europe. Now why? They said after they closed the last temple, of Isis at Philae. For some reason, I don't know if it was spiritual, they said Europe went into a dark age. I think they went into a dark age because after Rome fell, you see what I'm saying? They never had this.
How did Rome fall?
Well, it deteriorated based on like anything else, from corruption. And Rome fell after its reputation was found out. Rome was weak for a couple of years, but they had killed so many people until they had a reputation. You don't mess with Rome. But remember, they said that the German Vandals, they were illiterate, so they didn't get the memo that these people wasn't nothing to fuck with, and they went up in there and kicked Rome ass. You see, so it deteriorated over the years based on corruption, and also they with Constantine, although they say didn't he kill his mother and his daughter or something like that? He turned it into a Christian country and stuff. You see what I'm saying? It was weakened for the simple fact that it meant that they couldn't, if they're going to do the army thing, they're going to have to do it in another fashion. They're going to have the Holy Roman Empire. But it's a Holy Roman Empire. So they got to hide behind the Pope when they do these conquests. But it's not going to be the same might of the Caesars. You see what I'm saying? They're just going to have to just rule in another way. In actuality, they never did fall. They just acquiesced Europe with the religion, so it became a religious domination. You see what I'm saying? A religious domination and stuff. The military failed, but they had a new way to rule. You see, the new way to rule is the same thing when we talked about the Queen of Prince Charles after he got his ass whipped over here, and they couldn't deal with guerrilla warfare. The way these rednecks was over here fighting. They said, no, you go over there, they're going to beat you 100 years. They said, just regroup, and we will take over financially. And then we'll put, because of the finances, we'll put the heads of the government will be connected to the queen. And we'll rule that way, rule through secrecy. So, same thing happened with the Egyptian priests after Egypt fell. They said, well, look, when Muhammad was still living when the Arabs invaded Egypt. If there was a Muhammad, it could have just been a central priesthood. Because we know Bilal, come to find out, he was the one that wrote the Quran, because if there was a historical Muhammad, he couldn't read or write till the day he died. You see. He couldn't read or write till the day he died, and we knew it was some type of Ethiopian priesthood just by the central surah of the star, where they mention Sirius in the Quran. You see, the moon, Tahuti, the cow, Hathor. You see, these different things that they did means that this was a part of a mystery system. You see, and in this particular case, it probably was an Ethiopian Cushite mystery system, because we know Arabia was a part of Cush. We know it had to be a Cushite mystery system based on the first 5 books of Moses. You see, it's not a Central Egyptian theme. It's just the third coming of Judeo-Christian. You see. But in that particular case, by that time of them, Ethiopia had usurped the whole Hebrew thing. And parts of Coptic Christianity. So we know who put this thing together. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't translated from Gabriel, but then again, Gabriel could have been a priesthood. But in so many words, after they came and dominated and took over Egypt, the Egyptian priest said, look, Islam is a new conquest tool. You see, to centrally bring Islam into play, they had to fight at Mecca and Medina. And it was a kick-ass machine. So they said, this is the same kick-ass machine that conquered Egypt. So what we can do, these Egyptian priests, is we can go under the banner of Islam, take all these sacred texts, and go into Europe, and Islam will be a conquest thing, but the religion would be a mystery system. You see, so all these ancient Egyptian texts and all this ancient stuff that was translated, so here go again, here's another translation point. They took Metanetta, they took Greek, they took Coptic, they took Latin. Remember now, the Egyptian priests had already translated stuff into Latin and translated stuff into Greece. Coptic is later day Egyptian. You got Hebrew. But these Egyptian priests are the authors of all these languages and all these texts. So what they did is they went to Turkey, Baghdad, Salamanca, Spain, and then they translated the Greek, the Latin, the Coptic, the Metanetta into Arabic. And then they used it as a central force to open up the 16 universities in Europe to teach the European. They stayed there close to 800 years. Then whatever they brought to Europe, the European preserved. They had these conferences. They had a conference at Toledo. You get Toledo, Ohio, comes from Toledo, Spain. And from those conferences of Toledo, now this is after the, either right before the expulsion of the Moors in 1492 or right after. They had these conferences of all these texts that the Moors had brought up from Egypt and brought up from around the central ancient world and gave to the Europeans for 800 years, close to 800 years. So they took these texts and they had these periods. They call them Renaissance periods. Now, so what they did is they had these conferences and they had these festivals or conferences or these Renaissance periods in a place called Toledo. And from Toledo, with all those texts and stuff from Toledo, Spain, Cambridge, Oxford, and those early universities around Europe opened from the stuff that they preserved from the Moors. Then, after 1492, and a little bit, a couple of years later, they start having the Renaissance period in Italy. Now remember that this is very key, because you'll hear these white people talk about the Renaissance period. And they'll talk about things and all this learning and all this stuff. Whenever you hear the Renaissance period in Italy, that was nothing but them acquiescing the Moorish doctrines. You see,
talk about that for a while.
They talk about these Renaissance periods and they talk about all this great learning and stuff that happened with the Renaissance stuff, from music to art, philosophical points of view that would be the mindset of the European coming from out of the Middle Ages. They talk about the Renaissance period. And all the Renaissance period was the Pope and the Italians taking advantage of the learning that was given to the Europeans for the last 800 years by the Moors. So in so many words, here's another period where they basically take all these ancient doctrines of the Moorish black man and steal it and say it's theirs. Anytime you have these great things, these great periods, this is nothing but just acquiescing the Moors. The Moors information, I take for instance, secret societies, what they would do. The secret societies were basically started by the Moors. Let me explain. Knights Templars, York Rite, Scottish Rite, and all that. So let me explain how this came about. Because a lot of the doctrines after the Moors went to the secret societies too, and then they could sift out the greater knowledge and then give you the 7 liberal arts and stuff like that. But there's higher degrees of learning that now become the company of the lodge. Now let me explain how this lodge thing came about. The Moors came in, they created the 16 universities. That's what we can count. We don't know. Okay, let's say if you went to the university and then you got your regular learning, but then you would initiate into a fraternity. Well, the same thing happened in the Moorish science was this. You would come in and they would give you the general learning, and then you would initiate into a higher degree of learning, which now would be the fraternities, which is a ceremonial thing, but at that particular time it was the Masonic orders. So your Masonic order would be equivalent to a fraternity in modern day. So when you went to these universities and stuff, and you got to a certain level, and you learned the general several liberal arts and stuff, and the general several stuff that you learned, which now is all the universities teach. After that, you would go into a Masonic order that was a part of the universities, or a secret society that is a part of the universities. You see what I'm saying? To learn higher degrees of knowledge. We see remnants of that now where you got the Skull and Bones at Yale. So the Skull and Bones at Yale, although you got the people from Yale, but you got a secret society, that all came from the Moors. So what would be the secret societies inside of the universities of the Moors? It would be the York Rite, Scottish Rite, all of these different ones. And then later on, groups like the Rosicrucians that would come up. And what they did is that they took all of this Moorish doctrines. And so a lot of the higher degree stuff became a ward of the Masonic orders. You see what I'm saying? But all this stuff is nothing but stuff that they learned from the Moors. You see, they learned from the Moors. And everything is a series of acquiescing somebody else's paradigms. So the Moors saw a vision. The Moors saw a vision of a country and a place by the setting sun that was not even a civilization yet. It hadn't even come into fruition. And the Moors set out to bring that city on a shining hill that Ronald Reagan talks about. In the West, they start America. That's why you so many presidents before George Washington's were all black. Those were Moors. So this whole system over here was set up, you see what I'm saying? By the Moors. And for some reason, because of the Moors conquering Europe, and the Moors being the origin of Americas, for some reason the people who benefited from that deemed the Moor, which means blackface one, or the black Moor, or it also means, because anytime you hear the word Sufi, that's another word for the Moors. The word Sufi means woolly-haired one. So instead of saying they'll separate Sufi from the Moor. The Moor was a woolly-haired one. You see, and some reason I don't know. After Spain, C. Freeman calls it Manichaeism, racism, with Queen Isabella and those particular ones. They deemed the Moor the enemy.
Who?
The European secret societies that were started by the Moors. For some reason, it's almost as if to say, because you are our teacher, you have to be our enemy. When the white Masons or the white secret societies, what they do is whenever their initiates or their neophytes cross over into the initiated, the first thing they do is bring a black man in from wherever, blindfolded, and say, this is your father. Always hold him down. They know that civilization originated with us. They know that they are the latter part of that. For some reason, they feel that the only way they can rule is to keep the initiators of civilization down. It's some sick, demented way of thinking. It's a fear, xenophobia. This particular fear, we got to coin a new term for it. It's not the fear of a... Xenophobia is the fear of a person that's unlike you. Different cultures or what have you. We got to coin a new phrase that has to be into the lexicon. And that is a word that will say, you fear a person that you deem is greater than you. They fear us, and they say that we are the enemies, not because we are different. We are the enemies because we are the initiators of civilization, and we gave them all that they have. If you build a TV, you build an airplane, you build anything, the blueprints on what you might later day come to build these things, you got the technology from earlier people. Now you might expound upon it to the point where it's useful to the time you're living in, but nevertheless you were not the authors of the blueprint. You were not the master builder. We are the master builders. So you have a fear of our greatness.
Yes.
And because you fear our greatness, you say, we always have to be an enemy, because they figure our rise is their fall. So they feel that they can be around as long as they want to, as long as we don't rise. And what they don't realize, here it goes again. They are thinking that we're going to do to them like they do to us, because they think that humans think like them. No. You see what I'm saying? Your mother and your father, just like our mothers and fathers, would not treat us the same way as a child would treat somebody. You see. And basically, they're incapable of love. The thing is this fear that they feel that the society that they're going to be in has to be based on keeping the architects down. Number one, you got to keep them down because you stole every damn thing from them. Just for that to come out, you see what I'm saying, would make you feel inferior. Now, we're thinking like them. We wouldn't think that you're inferior if you inherited a civilization that we put together, but you think that you're inferior, you see what I'm saying, if you told the people, no, they're the architects of this thing. So it's some psychological sick and twisted stuff. You see what I'm saying? But nevertheless, you know, what we have a problem with is understanding people's thoughts, people's mentalities, people's temperament. You see what I'm saying? And we as black people get caught up in that because we think that they think like us. But all this had to be, you know, all this stuff had to be in the particular aspect because, let me give you, you said, well, why did this have to be this way? Well, look, let's just take the Moors. Because some people say, well, you know, we might have had another history if the Moors didn't go into Spain and go into Europe and educate them. Well, let's look at it this way. Now, we knew we were going into a state of dormancy, going to sleep. Civilization was going to go out of our hands. Based on just age, based on, like Dr. Ben said, time just ran out.
Seasons.
If we knew this, wouldn't you rather, and you knew a younger, savage people going to take over, wouldn't you try to want to educate them? So whenever you start to wake up out of your dormancy, you would have some sense of education and some sense of civilization. It's not the perfect. It's only a shadow of what we did. But can you imagine what would happen if you didn't educate him at all?
Oh, yeah.
And you came out of your dormancy and he's taking over the world. You see what I'm saying? In barbarism. So we knew if we didn't educate them, you see, then when we did start to wake up, we wouldn't even have a pseudo-education. We wouldn't have anything. If we just get back a part of what we gave them, there's things in us that we can preserve. You see what I'm saying? And be at a better position. Yep. We can look at the white man and say he came from the caves and preserved some stuff from us and started ruling. We gotta have something so we were advanced enough to see the future, know that we had to do certain things. You see. Because if we didn't give these children this, when we did wake up from out of our dormancy, we wouldn't have nothing. Look how bad it is when we woke up. Yeah. Can you imagine if he didn't get shit? Nothing. You see. So, our pyramids, from the pyramids, or from the pharaohs to Negroes, you understand?
Yeah.
In so many words, it's not necessarily a tragedy as it is a process. Now, going back to a timeline, if you rule for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, for thousands of years, what transpired in the last 2,000 years is a recess. Because you got to understand something now. They said that the European would only rule for a short period of time. We look at civilizations, America is falling off the hinges, right at a little over 200 years. You see, so we understand that, you know, this stuff it doesn't last forever. It's going to spin itself out. It's a recess compared to how long we rule.
Yes.
You see, not unless somebody wipes you out on a genocide level like the Tasmanians or the Aborigines, you still endure. Now, it might be at a certain level, but nevertheless, nothing is ever really destroyed. You see, we gave him a version of pharaonic society. To this day, we can look at certain things and say that came out of Egypt. You see, that came out of Egypt. So we look at things like that. So from the pyramids to the projects is a process more than it is, and a recess more than it is a failure. We got texts. Even the Bible says the Son of Man will rise in the west.
Yes.
The Book of the Dead, one of the names for Osiris is Osiris Winnefer. And Osiris Winnefer means the Great Westerner. Amenta, the land of Amen, is in the west. The sun sets in the west. You see. So all this is a process for us to be in the west. Now, we go into one other part about this thing, how this transpires to us. Now, on the genetic level, they say, out of Egypt I will call my son. Or out of Africa I will call my son. You had these Africans, some people call them tribes, some people call them nations, but they were scattered. They had broken apart, and they were nations. So in order to make it a covenant, make it whole again, you got to extrapolate an African body out to another land. And then you have to come in and extrapolate several different African tribes or African cultures out. And then you have to genetically mix them back together to make the whole African. You see. Let me give you an example. So they say that they talked about it two ways. They say that they used to take these large bodies of Africans and put them in the Caribbean. And then those Africans threw off the oppressors called the Maroon Societies, and they had these revolts. So they decided, look, we're going to take them to America and break them into small lots. But it won't be one nation that can take over. It'll be different African tribes from all over Africa. And we'll break them into small lots and intermarry them or intermingle them. And so as a result, the Westerner that they're talking about, or especially the African American, represents the putting back together of all the African tribes through the DNA. Because the African in this country has all of the different African tribes in its DNA. In its DNA. You know, in its DNA. You see. Put back together. Even the Schomburg in 2000, they said, well, you know, our story is a very unique story. Because our story as far as African Americans is not only where did we come out of Africa, but they intermix all different nations of Africa together in the DNA. You see? Because they didn't have the big lots of African that could come together and overthrow people based on big unity. So they broke them up into smaller pieces in America. And as a result, you got a new creation of the original. You got a new creation of the original. You see, so in so many words, the coming of the African to the West is actually the coming together of a new being that would be an even greater creation. Because it has all the elements of all the different Africans, and including all the different races in the world in it.
That's true.
You see. And that's that's putting back the body of Osiris. It's cut up into several pieces. But he'll be put back in the West. You see. Putting back the body of Osiris. So we saw all of this coming. We knew it was going to happen thousands of years before it happened. And we worked through hell, you see what I'm saying, to get a product together that we're really not even, we don't even know the power we hold now. Just by going through slavery. You see. We got texts coming from the Library of Alexandria of a group of people. They said a group of, we'll say Phoenicians. See, in that way, because if we put it back on the continent, we'll say group of Africans. And they said they took the group of Africans and put them together in a boat. But they were the greatest heroes. It's in the text, Jason of the Argonauts. He took the great heroes, they say from around Greece, but actually from around Phoenicia. Or we could say Greek because that was a black culture too. And they put the greatest ones in one boat to sail to the ends of the earth to get the golden fleece. And the golden fleece, in so many words, is the earlier version of what you would call the Christ now. So in order to make this Christ, they took the best of us, put him in a boat, sailed to the ends of the earth to get the golden fleece. You see, well, that's what happened with us. The best of us came united in the West, put back together after a separation of Osiris. You see, and the thing about it here is we just don't know what happened because we're still looking at the victim side of it. History shows you tragedy, yes. But there's a silver lining to what actually happened. It's a process. You see. And as a result, we can tell you right now, who had the resurgence, because they talk about in the last days, in the Gospel of Thomas, which was one of the books they took out of the Bible from the Conference of Nicaea. They say in the last days, all things that were hidden will come to manifest, and knowledge will be quickened. In the last 20 years, who was the ones that brought this knowledge back? Although we had several Africans and several people from the Caribbean and stuff, but as far as the knowledge being presented, it is an American phenomenon. You see, because Africa, you know, you got places they don't even have access to books. Even in the Caribbean, they got places they don't even have access to the libraries like this. So this phenomenon that we call the Afrocentric movement or the Black Consciousness movement, although it's made up of different people from the diaspora, the underpinning of it is an African-American phenomenon. So here again, just that alone lets you know, in all honesty, it shows the Africa being put back together in the West. It's a Western phenomenon. You see. So on one hand, you're looking at tragedy, you're not even noticing what just transpired within the last 20 years, 25 years. You see. Because everything has to start with ideas coming back together, otherwise you don't have nothing if you don't have knowledge. Know thyself. You see? And we know that phenomenon happened in the West. You see? So it's amazing.
The Pharaoh brings Joseph out of prison to interpret his dreams. Joseph declares that the dreams portend 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph recommends that the Pharaoh preserve food from the time of abundance for use during the time of famine. The Pharaoh is so impressed by Joseph's plan that he places him in charge of his entire court, a role that is memorialized on the walls of royal tombs. Egyptologist Dr. Yasser Izzat gave me a guided tour in the Valley of the Kings.
This is one of the most beautiful tombs in this area.
So these are all the images of the visit?
Yes, yes. As you see, and everywhere here they showed the title of the vizier. You see the blue circle up.
The circle with the dots in it.
Yeah, above it, you see the sign above it?
Yeah, now what is that sign?
Yeah, this is Emira, means the overseer of the city.
It's almost like you can draw a direct connection between these hieroglyphs on the wall
in America,
and what's in this book.
Black people are treated very much as the Vietnamese people or any other colonized people, because we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area. Our community, as a foreign troop, occupies territory, and the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us, because they have their orders to do so. And just as the soldiers in Vietnam have their orders to destroy the Vietnamese people, the police in our community couldn't possibly be there to protect our property, because we own no property. They couldn't possibly be there to see that we receive the due process of law, for the simple reason that the police themselves deny us the due process of law. And so it's very apparent that the police are only in our community, not for our security, but the security of the business owners in the community, and also to see that the status quo is kept intact. When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalizing anyone, we would put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand, because we were armed, and if the police arrested the individual, we would follow him to the jail and bail the individual out. Whether he was was a Panther or not. And we gained many recruits like this. So therefore, the community started to say that, well, these people are really concerned about our welfare. We feel that the white students should relate and pay more attention to the colonized situation here of the blacks first, because after all, this is home. And they should, this is not to say that they shouldn't denounce America's treacherous actions abroad. I think they can be done at the same time, that it's just a matter of placing emphasis upon the criminal activities of America here in the homeland.
Our prayer that we can have a peaceful, intelligent rally here this afternoon. But at the same time, we see that they have surrounded us with many of their own agents in uniform and out of uniform who have spent much time here in Harlem posing as peace officers and at the same time breaking up the peace of black people. So we hope that they will be peaceful and we will be peaceful. But no matter what happens, we don't teach you to turn the other cheek. We don't teach you to turn the other cheek in the South, and we don't teach you to turn the other cheek in the North. We teach you to obey the law. We teach you to carry yourselves in a respectable way. But at the same time, we teach you that anyone who puts his hand on you, do your best to see that he doesn't put it on anybody else. You don't have any vote for airplanes bringing drugs into this country. The white man brings it in. The white man brings it to Harlem. The white man makes you a drug addict. The white man then puts you in jail when he catches you using drugs. Who is it that controls the prostitution in Harlem? It's the white man. Who controls the large sale of whiskey and wine? It's the white man. You don't have any distillery. You don't own Shenley's. You don't own Old Overholt or Seagram. You don't put the seal on that bottle of whiskey. It's the white man. Who gives you the deck of cards and the dice that you use to gamble with? It's the white man. And after he sell them to you, he catch you with them and put you in jail for using them. We're trapped in a vicious cycle of poverty, of ignorance, of apathy, of disease, and of death. And they have these old Uncle Tom Negro leaders coming to Harlem telling you and me that times are getting better. Your times will never get better until you make them better.
A knockout in the 7th round. Immediately thereafter, he walked into the teeth of a monumental decision. He was drafted, and then he refused induction on the grounds of his religious convictions on war.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. Well, I'm going to shoot them for what? How am I going to shoot them? Them little poor little black people, little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? I would just take me to jail.
While fighting imprisonment for his stand, Ali was also stripped of his title, denied a license to fight in the United States, and denied a visa to go overseas to fight. He was in a much tighter financial bind than most were aware of.
I don't want to see the world heavyweight champion driving the Volkswagen, guys in the Cadillacs and making fun of you. So I'm working today, I'm hauling, right? And so one day I had to speak at Canisius. Heard of Canisius? Canisius, Fairleigh Dickinson, C.W. Post. 3 colleges at $1,500 a college. Pretty good money. So I broke my wife's piggy bank. She had about $35 in it. $135. I broke the piggy bank to get gas money to get me to the college. And I got enough gas and food money to get the $4,500, the $1,500 lecture. At $45 would hold me, pay gas bills, light bills, till I get to the next college. This went on until that whole mess was over.
Inevitably, students would challenge Ali on his stand and his convictions. Remarkably, Ali more than held his own against students who had a far better formal education than he.
I'm saying you talking about me about some draft, and all of you white boys are breaking your neck to get to Switzerland and Canada and London. I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have. If I'm going to die, I'll die now, right here fighting you. If I'm going to die, you my enemy. My enemy is the white people, not Viet Congs or Chinese or Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home.
Minister Malcolm, the thing that I thought might be good for starting it off is to talk about one of the most pervasive beliefs in the general society about the Nation of Islam, and that is that it is an organization dedicated to the use of violent means to attain its goals. The question I have is, how true is this, and why do you think it persists in society?
Well, the Muslims who have accepted the religion of Islam and follow the religious guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have never bombed any churches, have never murdered any little girls, as was done in Birmingham, have never lynched anybody, have never at any time been guilty of initiating any aggressive acts of violence during the entire 33 years or more that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching us. The charge of violence against us actually stems from the guilt complex that exists in the conscious and subconscious minds of most white people in this country. They know that they've been violent in their brutality against Negroes, and they feel that someday the Negro is going to wake up and try and do unto them as they have do unto the whites as the whites have done unto us. We aren't a violent group. We are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to obey the law, to respect everyone who respects us. We're taught to display courtesy, to be polite. But we're also taught that at any time anyone in any way inflicts or seeks to inflict violence upon us, we are within our religious rights to retaliate in self-defense to the maximum degree of our ability. We never initiate any violence upon anyone, but if anyone attacks us, we reserve the right to defend ourselves. So to accuse us of being violent is like accusing a man who is being lynched, who is being hung on a tree, simply because he struggles vigorously against his lyncher. The victim is accused of violence, but the lyncher is never accused of violence. And I only point this out because the various racist groups that are set up in this country by whites and who have actually practiced violence against blacks for 400 years are never associated or identified or made synonymous with the term violence. But whites speak of Muslims almost synonymously with violence. Whenever Muslims are mentioned by them, violence is brought up. But it's not connected with any other group. This is a sort of a propaganda tactic, or what I would call psychological warfare,